to Chicago, home of the 2024 NBA Draft Combine. We have scrimmages starting in just a few minutes. A scrimmage that will feature that guy, one Bronny James. We're going to be talking a lot about him. The most controversial guy possibly on the court today. I don't know. A lot of questions when it comes to Bronny James. All right, so we have two teams. Current NBA assistant coaches are our head coaches for today. We have Ryan Kelly of the Brooklyn Nets. He's going to be coaching one of our squads, and here is a look at the roster. On this side, Sean Farnham, who are you looking at when it comes to this matchup?
First of all, Ryan Kelly was a great player at Cal, a really good basketball player as well. I'm looking at KJ Simpson, staying in the Pac-12, Colorado, very experienced player that was very efficient this year for Tad Boyle. I think that efficiency, as the year went on and I talked to scouts at games, they kept saying KJ Simpson could maybe play his way into the late end of the first round. His leadership and his want to at the defensive end of the floor, I think bodes really well for KJ Simpson.
All right, and he's going up against Team Patrick St. Andrews of the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, when you look at this roster, there's one guy that we've already talked about plenty of times today, number 50. That is Bronny James. But when it comes to the rest of this roster, Corey, who are you looking at?
I'm going to look at the most productive college basketball player on here when you consider Antonio Reeves, who's from right here in Chicago, graduate of Simeon High School, played 3 years at Illinois State before finishing at Kentucky, where he was a leading scorer for a team that has a tremendous amount of lottery talent on it this year.
All right. Jump ball here in just a few seconds as we get ready for the scrimmage between Team St. Andrews and Team Forehand Kelly. Here we go.
And we're playing ball. This is where they're going to put Bronny James. They want him in the point guard position. To your point, Bobby, how important is it for him to show the ability to be a leader and a facilitator in a setting like this?
Well, it's something that he hasn't been able to, as you said, there was a small body of work, and I kind of compare it to what we saw of Andrew Nembhard a couple years ago, as far as really had a solid 2 days here and wound up getting drafted in the early part of the second round.
But one thing with that, Bobby, Andrew Nembhard was actually and Sean covers, of course, Gonzaga more than anyone. Andrew Nembhard was the primary ball handler while Jalen Suggs was off the ball for during the time that they were there together. So the question about Bronny coming in and being a point guard, there's one thing when it comes to a setting like this, and you all know it well, don't do what you can't do. Do what you do well.
Yeah, I think, playing to your strengths is something, you sometimes players get in their head so much that they want to show and prove that they can do something, that they deviate from what they are actually great or what makes them special. And that hurts them, I think, in this process.
Absolutely. Uncle John once told me they don't know what you don't know unless you tell them. So when you consider that, if you don't show them what you can't do, they don't know that you can't do that.
Corey, I want to ask you, because we saw Mark Sears out here getting shots up and doing the drills by himself because he wasn't able to do it yesterday. Do you think he had an advantage that there weren't as many guys on the court at the same time?
Absolutely. And he also got that one-on-one work with, of course, NBA veteran Derek Fisher, who's directing the camp. And it is more so about not just the shots and the advantage, it's about the conversation that goes on, what they're looking for from you. So he has that opportunity to be able to have that conversation with D. Fish well before any of these other players are able to do that in a one-on-one setting.
What a year Cam Spencer had. He just gave up the ball at the top, obviously, for UConn. The transfer twice from Loyola, Maryland to Rutgers, then to UConn, where he absolutely thrived this year. And I think one of the things that stood out most to me was the unselfishness and the ball movement that UConn had at the offensive end. But at the next level, he's a guy that's just a flat-out shooter.
He's a flat-out shooter, but like his brother, he's a guy that also, understands that he would have to take the long route as he watched him miss a couple in a row there. But he's the guy that knows that he would have to take a long route to get there. But Pat, his older brother, actually got a two-way this year with Golden State.
He is the X factor in this combine. Ulrich Kamche, NBA Afro Academy, did not start playing basketball until he was aged 13 years old, was found walking in the streets of Cameroon, lived in a village when he was younger here, and he's just scratching the surface here.
He's the youngest player eligible in this draft. Let me ask you this, Bobby, from an executive perspective. like when there's such limited film, there's not a lot of film on him. When you do watch, you see flashes of what you believe could be maybe potentially a down-the-road starter underneath. But like when there isn't that great amount of film, how do front offices kind of break through all of that and try to figure out exactly who he is?
You know what, yesterday helped. His mechanics shooting the ball were really strong, really fluid, and you really didn't get to see that from him. Still in the portal, was going to go to Kentucky, I believe. So this is going to help him here. And as I said, this is more upside. This is more kind of 2 years from now, if you can develop that player.
He doesn't turn 19 until December 30th.
He's been on his own for about 6 years, too. Yeah. That's pretty amazing.
So which means he made it by 2 days. You have to actually turn 19 within the calendar year in order to be draft eligible. So made it by 2 days there. A couple more days later, he would have to wait until next season.
Whew. He attacked a Dembona right there. Of course, played at UCLA.
I'm a big fan of Bona.
Are you?
I absolutely am. I had one opportunity to get out into your neck of the woods this year. My guy Dave Pash and I called the Colorado UCLA game, and I saw a Dembona, and a Dembona, I believe he's a lot more mobile than many people give him credit for being. But one thing for certain, when you play for Mick Cronin, you have to understand how to play hard. He had stretches where he was really, just fantastic. But I think one of the reasons why many people are surprised that I'm a big fan is because he has so many stretches where he disappears also.
Well, and he fouls.
Well, again,
like the foul issue to me.
You get 6 in the NBA, though.
Right. Playing hard is one thing. Okay, but playing hard also means can you give the effort without fouling? And for a Dembona, that was something that plagued him throughout the course of his college career. That and injuries. He had the shoulder injury that kept him out of the NCAA tournament a little bit over a year ago. But I think when you look at him, he's physically imposing. His body's ready for the NBA right now. Defensive philosophies, understanding the coverages, all those things that you were talking about with Mick Cronin, I think translates well for a Dembona to maybe find a way. Maybe it's a two-way contract to begin with, but then find a way on a roster at some point.
Yeah, he mentioned to me when I talked to him that he had the labrum issue a year ago, and he basically kind of learned how to use his right hand during that. And I think he saw a little bit of an increase in his free throw percentage.
You know, one of the things with that, too, also, and we all know, no one that's going to be playing today is going to be drafted to be a starter. And so the thing is what is your role? Can you accept your role and play to that role? So when we talk about the fouling of a Dembona, he's not going to be a guy that's going to be on the floor, especially early in his career, for 20, 25 minutes.
Well, and I think that's what we talk about this draft. We focus on the fact of the lack of star power at the top of this draft. But to me, when I look at this draft, I think there's 20, 25 guys that are going to get drafted here in June that are going to be 7 to 10-year vets in the NBA in their role. Now, the difficult part, to your point, Corey, is that so many of these guys have been stars from the first time they touched a basketball in their hand. And do they understand the sacrifices that it takes and the acceptance of the role that they'll need to have in order to have longevity at that next level?
And let me tell you, from a personal level, that's difficult to do.
Yeah.
I was a star my entire life. In my first game in San Antonio, I never took my warm-up off. I was a spectator.
Yeah.
And so to be able to see that, and it was difficult, especially during my rookie year, accepting that role, knowing that I felt like I was just as good or better than anyone on the floor, even though in reality I was not. But it's difficult to understand that, especially as a young person.
That's a smart play by Dembona right there. Like, here you are, and you're at the three-point line. It gets kicked out to you. You know that's not your shot. So what do? You hand off, and you set a great screen, and you open up a wide-open look for your teammate.
All right, as they take a timeout, we're going to go to a quick break. More scrimmage when we get back to the 2024 NBA Draft Combine.
Bronny James will enter the 2024 NBA Draft.
Why not? I don't believe Bronny is built for college. He's ready right now.
It's going to be a journey influenced by LeBron to some degree, whether it be negatively or positive.
To have his own journey, his own lane until he finds his exit.
There's LeBron James Jr. LeBron James Sr. and the Lakers have a few things to figure out this offseason. LeBron James, one of the free agents on that squad. When it comes to the Lakers, Bobby, what exactly do you think that they should do in this 2024
Well,
NBA draft?
it's all going to be dependent on certainly LeBron's option, which is June 29th. It's a $49 million player option. New Orleans has until June 1st to defer that pick until next year. The likelihood is that they will have the 17th and the 55th pick in the draft year. But this team is win now, right? This is a win now team as far as when you have him and Anthony Davis, and now you got to go out and hire a new head coach. So you're waiting on the LeBron decision. Certainly you can find some young players in the draft, but you have to be content. Was last year good enough, or was last year as good as it was going to be? Remember, AD and LeBron played the most games together since the two of them have been together since 2019.
+4 wins year to year. That's all it was with all those games played. And to your point, you look at the Western Conference and you see the youthful movement up at the top, whether it's the T-Wolves with Ant and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Thunder being younger than even some of the college teams that Corey and I cover on a consistent basis. I mean, to me, the concern would be if you're the Lakers is, yes, of course, it's LeBron James. You're reinvesting. You want to re-sign him. You want the box office. But the roster is constructed now. I don't see any way that roster breaks the top 3 or 4 of the Western Conference with the way that the Western Conference is stacked up right now.
We haven't even talked about Memphis.
Yeah.
Memphis, who was in the lottery, and certainly Houston's going to get better, and who knows what happens in San Antonio with Victor. You've got 4, 8, 35, 48 in the draft. You got a boatload of other draft assets. You can go out and get a player.
Yeah.
Maybe we talked about maybe Trae Young becomes available.
Right,
and maybe
100%.
you want to go get him here. So there's a lot of teams that are going to eventually catch up to where the Lakers are.
I know Woj isn't here yet, but have the Lakers hired a coach?
No.
Okay, so I think that's probably priority number one. Before we even start dealing with the personnel, I think it's important to find out who is going to be leading the Lakers moving forward from the sideline. And I think that's going to have a lot of but one thing that you did also mention, Bobby, you talked about the Pelicans being able to defer that pick. Now, can you break that down for our audience?
Yeah, that's from the Anthony Davis trade back in 2019. So they have until June 1st to defer. If they do, it becomes unprotected in 2025 in a draft that could be potentially very, very strong. And who knows what happens next year? Whether there be injuries, whether it be a trade. Can they repeat winning, 46, 47 games? Potentially could be remember, New Orleans finished with 49 wins and basically just got into the playoffs this year.
Well, I can tell you for certain, after watching this class, the draft class of 2024, and many of the prospects that will be draft eligible in 2025, if I have my option, I'm deferring any pick because I want to be able to pick next year.
Especially if you're assuming that draft spot's not going to change all that much for the Lakers, and it won't. By the way, one of the good stories here, too, is I love this about the Combine, is the G League Combine takes place over the course of the weekend. Players get invited that perform well there to stay over and play. Jesse Edwards is one of those players, number 13 in the gray uniforms out on the floor right now. He has come off the bench and immediately provided energy at both ends of the floor. And he had to play his way not only through the G League, but he went to Portsmouth before he got to the G League camp to have the opportunity to get here. Of course, he started his career at Syracuse, where he was a double-double machine, had an injury-riddled season this year, but at 6'11", good footwork, can defend out on the perimeter. I think he becomes an intriguing person that scouts will continue to watch as this draft process continues to move along.
I agree wholeheartedly, Sean. And he's one of those guys that even if he's not drafted, you look at as a potential two-way guy because he is that lob threat. He has the ability to protect the rim, and more importantly, he has a skill set that allows him to be able to grow as a basketball player. Covered him a lot at Syracuse, and the improvement from when he stepped on campus there to where he is now has been tremendous. And you mentioned the G League Combine 2 seasons ago, Bobby. Remember, we had a guy by the name of Kenny Lofton who made it out of the G League Combine and ended up becoming not only one of the stars of that, but one of the stars of the Combine overall. Spent his rookie year in Memphis, had some bright spots throughout that year.
Yeah, and he's in, certainly out west right now. And I think where the Combine was over the weekend here, we had good guard play.
Yeah.
Really good guard play, and 6 players wind up coming out of that.
Yeah, Boogie Ellis, one of those. We'll see him later on today. There's KJ Simpson. He can be explosive in the open floor. He gets the ball in his hands, and his ability to change ends of the floor. He's not the quickest in a shuttle. He's not going to be the quickest in the three-quarter court sprint, but it's all about bursts. And I love guards that are experienced. I love guards that understand how to play and make people better. KJ Simpson, watch the ball hit his hands, find a gap like a good running back, split the seam. To me, that whole thing is just the breaking out of Anthony Edwards.
Heck yeah.
I mean, is there a better story right now?
Face of the league, future face of the league.
And that future face of the league is playing basketball in Minnesota.
Right.
You know, I mean, and that's not a bad thing now because the way the game is covered, because of media rights and partnerships. You can become a star really at any franchise. We've seen that with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at Oklahoma City, but his explosive,ness, that block shot where he hit his head on the rim. Yeah. You know, those are the things that for young kids, I got teenage boys. I can list off, I go, okay, hey, give me the best players in the NBA. And they'll go Anthony Edwards often because that's the highlights they get on their cell phones and Instagram and all those things. But, man, it has been fun to watch the way they defend.
Well, here's a lesson, too, you just mentioned here. The beauty of Anthony Edwards is not what he's done on the court. I mean, he's turning into a top-5 player. It's him empowering the other players on his team. Anthony Edwards knows he's the best player on that roster. But it's still Karl Anthony Towns' team, or Rudy Gobert, or Mike Conley, or Jaden McDaniels, to make those guys to build up their confidence. But it's going to be interesting tonight as far as going into a hostile situation in Denver. 44 points the other night in Minnesota wasn't good enough. He's almost going to have to put this team on his shoulders here.
Yeah.
I love Anthony Edwards. I had the opportunity to call a number of his games so far, playoff games this season, and will actually be at Game 6 on Thursday night when they back in Minnesota for the Nuggets matchup. But Christine, I'm going to slow down on the face of the league. And the only reason I say that is because if you rewind 18 months ago, who was the next face of the league, Bobby Marks?
Oh, now you're really putting me on the spot.
Okay.
On the spot here.
I would go with one Ja Morant.
I was going to say Ja. Okay, yes. And of course, he had his issues, and we've seen it. But I do think it's been very fun to watch the young guys. They've kind of changed the way that the league looks. Even watching like OKC win last night, right? When Shai's up there doing his post-game interview, it kind of feels a little bit more like what we see in collegiate basketball, where everybody is kind of rallying around their one guy. So it has been fun to watch the young guys kind of take the league in their own hands.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I believe you, and I believe Anthony Edwards will be one of those guys.
Right.
However, the NBA is no longer a national game. It's a global game. The face of the league is in San Antonio. He wears number 1. Victor Wembanyama is the face of the league moving forward, and he will be the best player in the NBA for the next 15 years.
I do also want to point out, when we talk about the Timberwolves, right, we talk about that giving nature of empowering others. It goes back to the conversation we had in the first segment here of this game with accepting of roles. Naz Reid accepting his role and then thriving in his role may be as important as any player on that roster.
Yeah, and here's another one, too, Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Yeah.
I mean, a player that was drafted in the first round high, bounces around to multiple teams, and it's not always about the team you draft, but it's kind of your 4th or 5th team here.
And that's also just bring it back to the combine. Naz Reid was a guy that was undrafted.
Yep.
Right? So who are those guys here that we're going to see at the NBA draft combine that go undrafted but find their way to be able to get to that level? Well, we can talk about another guy who is going to be on the side over here with us today. It's going to be
24 NBA draft combine. A lot of guys out here working in the scrimmage. One of those guys that's not out there, your mustache has grown in a little bit more. I told him the other day, I like the stash. Reed Sheppard, the freshman from Kentucky, joining us on the desk today. Reed, obviously, you know, I think the one thing that stands out is the fact that there's so many Kentucky guys out here. There's 4 of you guys, right? So I feel like it kind of feels a little bit more comfy for the players that have their teammates around them. How has it been going through this process with your teammates?
Yeah, it's been awesome. You know, you get used to being with your teammates for so long. All right, we're with each other all year, every day, all day. And then we go a month and a half without seeing each other. So I was able to see Justin and Rob and Antonio and just getting to see them all, you know, Saturday night and throughout the week. It's been really fun being able to catch back up. And then now I was watching Justin and Antonio play. So it's really cool being able to see them, just because you're with them so much, and then when you're not with them, you actually miss them a little bit. So it's fun to see them for sure.
All right, so you set the combine on its head yesterday with a 42-inch vertical leap. What was your preparation like? What did that feel like to touch 42 and say, hey, I'm dropping the mic here. I'm Reed Sheppard. Let me introduce myself.
Yeah, so I think they messed it up. I think they lowered it a little bit for me, and somehow it was fun. You know, this whole process is unbelievable. Being able to be here, testing, doing all the drills, doing everything, and with all the great guys that are here, the great players, and then, you know, it's full of great coaches and organizations as well. So just being here is really special. It's really, really cool having this opportunity, and I'm super thankful for it.
Reed, you've been working out the last couple months here. What's been the primary focus for you as far as getting ready for this combine?
Yeah, just getting better at everything, you know. You know, just continuing to stay in the gym, stay in shape, continue to work on what needs to be worked on, but then growing your overall game. You know, I don't like to pick one thing to kind of get better at. I just want to keep improving overall, and then just have fun with the whole process.
So I watched your shooting drill, and you were going full speed, taking game shots. That would seem to be important to you to compete in that.
Yeah, it's very important, just because in the game you have to go game speed. If you don't go game speed, you're not going to get the shots up. And working out and training at game speed, I think you just get a feel for how you're going to be shooting in the games. I don't like shooting in workouts when it's not game speed, just because that's not how it's going to happen in the game. So being able to go game speed and be out here and everything is really nice.
All right, and so just from the flip side of that, now you're a Kentucky guy. Born, bred Kentucky. Both parents, of course, UK. You grew up in the different coaches era, but also seeing John Calipari come through. Now with Mark Pope coming back to Kentucky, are you going to be that bridge that brings the old with the new? Because you're going to have that separation of Cal guys and now the old guys coming back in with Mark Pope.
Yeah, you know, my time with Kentucky was unbelievable. You know, Coach Cal to me is the best coach in the world, and he was unbelievable to me, and all the players. We really enjoyed playing for him, and I'm super happy for him. And it was an unbelievable run that he had. And then, you know, Coach Pope, you know, we know him and his family very well. Of course, Dad and him were roommates at Kentucky. So I actually was just speaking to him over there before I came out here. But, you know, I think he's going to do great things. He's a really good coach. He's got some really good players coming in. I'm super excited to watch him play and continue to cheer for Kentucky.
Okay, so obviously this isn't the real thing, but our guy, Jonathan Givony, does a mock draft. He has you going at number 3 overall to the Rockets. He has your guy, Rob, with the shifts, going number 4 to the San Antonio Spurs. I was talking to Rob a little bit before the lottery on Sunday, and he was saying how nervous he was for this process. Do you feel those same nerves as you're going through this process?
Yeah, for sure. It's something that everyone dreams of since they're a little boy. And now being here, it's crazy. You know, having the opportunity is crazy, and it's really, really cool. So it's like you almost want the draft to be tomorrow, so you don't have to continue to wait. But at the same time, you want to enjoy the process and have fun with it all.
What about the process makes you the most nervous? You guys, obviously, you've trained on the court. I know Rob was talking about just having the conversations, the media, and all of that kind of stuff was making him nervous. What about the process has made you the most nervous?
Yeah, you know, it's just different. You don't know what's next. And so I think that's the hardest part, is you just have no idea. You're in control, but you're not really in that much control. But at the end of the day, you know, not a lot of people have this opportunity. So just enjoying the process and having fun throughout it all, and just learning and growing as a person and a player through this whole experience.
Mark Pope wants you to know it's not too late. He just texted me. No, all jokes aside, you know, we talk about nerves, but what's more nerve-wracking, doing this or being a Kentucky-born kid playing basketball at Kentucky?
Yeah, that was crazy. You know, the first time running out at Kentucky was unbelievable. You know, like I've said, it was a dream of mine to play there. So being able to play there was awesome. The fans were nuts. You know, playing for Coach Cal was really fun, and it was nerve-wracking. But at the end of the day, I had great players around me and great coaches, and this is the same way here. Is you got great players around you and great coaches.
What's your comp? We always do NBA comps. If you were going to comp yourself to anybody, who would you comp yourself to?
That's a good question. I get a lot of Steve Nash, which I'm okay with because he's a really good player. But I don't know.
Yeah, multiple MVP. Yeah, he's
not
pretty
bad.
good.
Not bad. No, but I like watching all the Kentucky guys and kind of trying to take some parts of their games just because being from Kentucky, I've always watched Kentucky guys play, so it's really cool seeing all the Kentucky guys in the NBA.
And D-Book's your favorite Kentucky player, right?
D-Book is.
Yeah. All right. We'll see if you can stack up to him. Thank you so much, Reed.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you.
We'll see you around. Keep growing that stash out.
Yep.
All right, let's get back to some game action. Team Forehand Kelly down 25-16.
A couple plays that were made behind us, by the way. Adembona did a great job disrupting and guarding the post, deflecting the ball away, throwing it ahead, and then filling the lane and a lob back to him. Those are plays that translate. Like, to your point, Corey, of why you like him, if you're an NBA GM, if you're an NBA scout and you're watching that, it's going good post defense, gave the ball up at the appropriate time, filled the lane and ran it extremely hard, able to finish above the rim. That checks a lot of boxes in just one moment.
But as you go back to talking about his time at UCLA, playing for Mick Cronin, and understanding pick and roll coverages, understanding that it's a defense first mentality, because of course, as a big man coming into the NBA, very few people at this point are concerned about what you do offensively. It's how you're able to guard pick and roll. You're going to have to deal with it on every possession down the floor. So understanding that, that's why that makes him so intriguing to me at the NBA level. You see the size, you see the body and everything. He's built to be able to play at the level of the NBA. But more importantly, mentally, how does he go about doing that? College basketball, Sean, you know this. Bobby, you know this. Christine as well. It's a completely different game than what you see at the NBA.
Yeah.
It's two completely different games.
3 players that he likes to study: Bam Adebayo, Clint Capella, Draymond Green. Those are the 3 guys that he studies.
3 guys who have made their name on the defensive end of the floor. 2 of those guys, defensive player of the year candidates all the time, Draymond and Bam. And then Clint Capella, who of course has been one of the best in doing it over the last 10 years on the defensive end, protecting the rim, but also being able to go out and guard pick and roll.
You know, one of the things with Reed Sheppard, who just joined us, let me ask you this, Bobby, because interview process, character, background. I was lucky enough to be at the Mavs-Clippers game, and Reed was there with his mom, and he spent time with my 13-year-old son for like 15 minutes talking about what my son likes. I mean, he's just a genuine, real dude. Like, how important is that as this process?
How old is Reed? 19? Is he even that yet?
It might not be.
Listen, I worked with
He's
him.
20, by the way.
I worked with him during his interview prep. He didn't need my help.
Yeah.
He did not need my help, and he is as good as it gets when it comes from, certainly his personality here.
Yeah, his dad played at Kentucky, his mom
Just
played.
because who else brought more attention to the sport? And I go back, Lisa Leslie, you go Candace Parker, you go to everybody, Brianna Stewart, and all the greats, Diana Taurasi, and all the greats that were there. Go back to Stanford and those teams with her. But the amount of publicity that she dealt with and the pressure she dealt with and how she dealt with those young fans, she brought them into the house. And you want to know how she brought them into the house and how I know that she has? Have you seen the ticket prices for the Fever? Like, they're higher per ticket prices right now than they are for the Pacers. And that's Caitlin Clark and the impact. And I hope that bodes very well to those college fans, because it doesn't happen all the time. College fans don't follow players to that next level. I hope a lot of these college fans and the people that got on board, and 10 million and 20 million people that watch the Final Four, that they follow over now to what she's going to do to the WNBA.
Yeah, I had the opportunity talking to Peyton Sanford from Iowa during this process here, and I asked him, have you ever played against Caitlin Clark? And he goes, yeah, and I beat her. And I said, well, what grade? Second.
That, in fact, does not count. Okay, so he's not on the court right now, Bronny James, the freshman from USC. But we do have an update from JG, who is down on the court.
Guys, I was just thinking back to the 2016 NBA Combine here in Chicago. Josh Hart was the worst player on the floor here. He went 1 of 9 from the field through 2 games. He had 6 points. He had to go back to school that year, and then he won a national championship and became a first-round pick. Just watching the first half of this game, it just really stands out how all the best players on the floor are older guys. You see Baylor Scheierman, KJ Simpson, Isaac Jones. These guys are battle-tested. They know how to play. It's not easy for a young guy like Bronny James to come in and assert himself at this level. We've seen a bunch of turnovers. We've seen some defensive mishaps. Not a great first half for him. Experience does matter at this level.
But, JG, also what matters at this level is being on the floor competing. Oftentimes, it's not necessarily the guys who produce the best numbers or play the best, but what a lot of execs are looking at is who actually gets on the floor and competes. Do you give Bronny a little credit for that?
Absolutely. That's the best thing that Bronny brings is the defensive intensity, the versatility. He's getting over screens here. He's denying off the ball. That's one thing that he can absolutely do at a very high level. It's just the offense that's not there yet. We see that, late with his reads, the playmaking isn't there. They're playing him a little bit at point guard, and he's not comfortable with an initiator. He's got work to do with that part of his game, and the best place to do that is in college, in my view.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and Bronny has left that door open. And again, Bron showed up in Cleveland last night. Hey, Ohio State is a place where Bronny took a visit. It's a possibility. I'm just saying.
Listen, to me, here's where he needs to do. He needs to go back to college. And he needs to find a college that is going to put the ball in his hands. And that he's going to have as many minutes in that position as possible if he wants to do this. Because as Jonathan was just saying, off the ball, that's fine. But you're 6'1". Off the ball, you can't be a two-guard in the NBA at 6'1". Okay, and so you need to be able to improve and cut down the turnovers and quicken those reads. And if you're not put in that position frequently, it's really, really tough to grow.
I say this, Sean. You absolutely can be a shooting guard in the NBA at 6 foot 1.5 inches. And the reason why you can do that is because you look at other guys in this draft process. Look at Jared McCain. Jared McCain is 6'2".
Right.
He's a shooting guard.
Yeah.
He can absolutely shoot. Bronny can shoot. Bronny can shoot.
Bronny cannot shoot like Jared McCain.
No, he can. I don't know if there's anyone here that can shoot like Jared McCain. When we put it all on there, I'm not sure there's anyone here that can top Jared McCain when it comes to shooting alone. But you can absolutely play that position at that size. You look at Deuce McBride for the New York Knicks, who took 3 years to really be able to crack the rotation. There are a number of guys in the NBA who are doing it, but it's going to take time. But as you mentioned before, a lot of those guys are 4-year college players. They're guys who cut their teeth and got that experience in college and then learned the NBA game and found a way to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about kind of the investment. Is a team willing to make an investment for 3 or 4 years? I mean, two-way contracts are 1 or 2 year deals. I mean, second-round picks are 3 or 4 year contracts here, and there's only 58 slots this year.
Right.
Yeah, and you
that's
back.
the reality.
You go back to Sean's point about Caitlin Clark. Christine, to answer your question, is Caitlin Clark the greatest college basketball player, women's college basketball player of all time? The answer is no, she's not. She's on Mount Rushmore, but she's not the best. You got to go back. You talk Cheryl Miller.
Right.
Let's start with there. We talk about Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore. We're not sure which one of those is even better. Lisa Leslie. You think Candace Parker. But she is on Mount Rushmore. But what she did do, she did energize the sport. So when you start talking about the investment for Bronny James, can Bronny James energize a franchise just by being Bronny James, who has more followers than anyone on social media, et cetera, if you do make that investment in drafting him?
But I think there's two investments, right? The investment of drafting him, and then there's the investment of time of growth.
Right.
And Jonathan brought up Josh Hart. And you look at the New York Knicks, and to me, they are the poster child of organizations that understand time and development is important and being ready to go. Because you look at all the guys from Villanova. They all had long college careers. They all played out. They all developed. They all grew. They understood playing off of 2 feet and why that was so important. And star power alone, if you look just roster versus roster, the Knicks aren't this elite franchise in regards to just talent on their roster, but it's the roles, the understanding of how to play. And if they were healthy, by the way, you could make a legitimate argument that they would be right there behind the Celtics as really pushing them. I know they're the 2 seed overall, but they would be pushing them even in the postseason potentially here. But without Mitchell Robinson, they've had injuries and guys that it's a little bit too much maybe to ask for. But to me, I look at guys like Josh Hart. There's 4 or 5 potential Josh Harts in this draft. And if you look at somebody and say, hey, they're experienced, they can come in, they fulfill their role, they can shoot and bring stability to your roster, well, heck, that's a good player yet.
I understand what you say. There are guys that can be Josh Hart, but I've known Josh Hart since he was 14 years old. He decided to go to Sidwell Friends High School. Nobody in this class is built like Josh Hart. What Josh Hart has internally separates him from everybody, not just everyone here, from pretty much everyone in the NBA. And that's the reason why he's so successful, is because of how he's built, how he's made, and his mentality when he steps on the floor.
Well, and this comes down to the debate we have every year. 3 or 4 year guys or freshmen that have potentially the upside there.
Right.
Can you go out and get a guy that's been in college and put him on the court right away, but maybe doesn't have as much upside? Or are you willing to kind of take a risk as far as one of these investment, players as far as from a development? We saw it last year, Jaime Jaquez in Miami. Yeah. 3 and 4 year guys come in, play right away. Brandon Podziemski in Golden State, both guys are going to make all rookie.
Yeah. Podziemski, his story is unbelievable. You go back to 2 years ago at Illinois, 1.7 points per game, goes to Santa Clara under Herb Sendek, who obviously went back-to-back years with guys, and Jalen Williams was another guy that they had out at Santa Clara, where they grew so much during their period of time there, and the motor and how hard they played. I think, Corey, that your point about Josh is very accurate. You're the one person at this desk that's done this, that's played at that level, okay? And when I talk to kids, and you and I are both in the college circuit all the time, you're doing a ton of ACC games, and you talk to these kids, you talk to their parents, the illusion of what they think, how easy that transition is. You were one of the baddest dudes at Virginia, period. You were one of the baddest dudes in the country. How difficult was it when you made that transition to get to that next spot?
I went from being one of the baddest dudes to not a dude that was even a factor. Yeah. That's what it was. I walked into training camp, and Bob Hill, who was the coach at the San Antonio Spurs at the time, he said, "What's your job?" I said, "Well, my job is to come in and play defense, this, that, and other." He said, all those things are correct, but your job as a 22-year-old rookie is to tell the 1995 most valuable player, David Robinson, what to do. And again, so to take that as a young player and to have to take that experience to going and telling a seasoned NBA veteran who just won the NBA MVP, I've got to tell him what to do. That takes a lot to be able to do. And I wasn't good at it. Yeah. I wasn't good at it early in my career. And that's part of the development.
Very few are, though.
That's it. Very few are. But it's a completely different game today. Yep. Because the superstars are now 22 years old. Right. And the young guys are 19.
All right, we mentioned Josh Hart, had a little conversation about him there. Friday night, the NBA playoffs continue on ESPN. We'll have Game 6 between the Knicks and the Pacers. The series currently tied 2-2, Game 5. Then, if necessary, it's Game 6 of the Celtics versus the Cavs.
One of the things that stood out to me so far while we're watching this, we were 22 seconds away from halftime, is the pressure you can see is wearing on some of these guys. Like the pace of play, their decision making, they're pressing right now under the spotlight. And it's not the spotlight of being on ESPN. All of these guys have been on ESPN. But it's a spotlight of trying to be at your best when your best is needed in front of everybody that's evaluating you.
We always tell kids, somebody's always watching. Well, we don't have to tell them today.
They can see it on the far side of this gym.
They can look around and see people that they've watched on television, and seeing the Danny Ainges, seeing the Brad Stevens, seeing all the GMs and the presidents of basketball operations here watching them and deciding their fate.
St. Andrews up 42-36 against Team Forehand Kelly. We got camp director Derek Fisher joining us on the other side of this.
Finish against length. And to me, I think that's who KJ Simpson is, and it's that experience. And Bobby, the question I have is, we've seen this before, like Andrew Nembhard played really well here, played day one, did not play day two because he played well enough in game one. But when this happens for KJ Simpson, what does that mean for him?
Well, I think it helps. Certainly we have him as a early second-round pick in the recent mock draft. I can certainly see him going into maybe the late first round here. But here's the thing, in talking with him, I asked him, his shooting numbers went through the roof. I mean, he went up to 47.5 from the field and 43.6 from three. And I asked him, he said, well, it sounds cliche as far as what I did last offseason because I literally locked myself in the gym and shot, and my girlfriend rebounded for me. No trainers, no coaches, just me and her shooting the ball all just trying to get better.
Can never say you wasn't with me shooting in the gym. Can never say it. Can't use that line with
Nobody
this girl.
could say that ever.
And here's the interesting thing, by the way, when you think about KJ and the exposure that he got this year. Cody Williams brought a ton of NBA executives to Colorado games that otherwise wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
And often when they left, they talked about KJ Simpson. That doesn't mean they weren't talking about Cody Williams, but they were going, hey, wait, this KJ Simpson kid's got some stuff to him.
And they were also talking about Tristan da Silva.
Yep.
That team was loaded with NBA caliber talent, but the thing about KJ Simpson, I love KJ. Shout out to Team Why Not, Russell Westbrook's AAU program. But the thing about KJ, when you're a small guard, you have to be elite at something. What is he elite at? And by the way, Christine, you didn't bring it up, but the guy I highlighted, Antonio Reeves, actually is the leading scorer for the team that's winning. For the team that's winning in the first half. Yeah, okay.
By the way, KJ Simpson led his team in points, assists, and steals. So you mentioned how good that Colorado team is. He was the best player on that squad.
And the toughest player on that squad. That matters most when you consider the fact that a smaller guard, you better have that toughness.
You talk about why not. Shout out to Dave Rabibo, high school coach, Harvard Westlake. Out in Southern California, does a great job with the team Why Not. There's so many of these kids have been on the EYBL. Corey, you do a lot of stuff with the EYBL, but the pressure in club circuit, whether it's there, whether it's the Adidas Gauntlet, or whether it's the Pro 16. Look, we're all wearing Nikes up here.
Okay, there you go.
But the way the system is structured right now, these kids do get to play against some of the best in the country, sometimes even the world, at a very young age, and it helps accelerate some of their growth.
It helps accelerate some of that growth, but it also stunts them to an extent because they all become friends. And they don't often compete against their friends the way we would love to see them do at such an early age. And I think that's really the difference. This class has it. If you go back to the McDonald's All-American game last year, this group and a lot of players, Justin Edwards, who's on the floor right now, these guys competed. But the class ahead is really competitive. And you also have to think about many of the guys that are in this combine now are guys who were affected by COVID. And that's one of the things that, we often have to look at as we start to come out of the pandemic. Many of these guys missed out on a lot of opportunities coming out of high school as well as going into their college careers that they didn't get the same experiences that we saw from a lot of other players.
And I feel like that's the difference, too, between when you see a lot of the young guys here and then when you talk about the older guys, they're so old because they had the COVID year. They'd been in their college programs for a very long time. So it's very interesting to see the juxtaposition to guys that are honestly the same age as a lot of guys that are in the NBA right now. Anthony Edwards and people like that are 22 years old. You have 24-year-olds here at the NBA Draft Combine.
That goes back to Bobby's point. When you consider the guys, coming in, if you've been in college for a few years, right? 3-4 years you spent in college, you've learned a lot of things about who you are as a person in comparison to what you have to do on the court. It's still a brand new game.
Right.
Our guest will be able to talk about that as well as he entered the NBA in the year 1996, came in a year after me, so it makes him just as old as far as I look at it. But we have Derek Fisher joining us, who, of course, is the camp director this year. And, D. Fish, think about when you go back to 1996, you and Kobe coming in with the Lakers. How much of a completely different game was that compared to what you did in college?
Oh, compared to college?
Yes.
For me, it was the galaxies different. Playing at a smaller mid-major school, the centers and bigs were 6'6", not 7'1". So it's light years between what most guys see in college on a consistent basis. Some of the Power 5 conferences, those guys are seeing similar experiences, but most of the guys
they're not.
They're not what they'll see. What they're seeing here,
right,
but not what they'll see opening night when the season starts.
Yeah. What's the biggest point of emphasis you want all of these guys here at the Combine to leave with?
I think for the players, understanding that this is just one data point. These guys have been watching. You've been watching these guys for years. Maybe some of them since club team, circuit, 1 or 2 years of college. Maybe if they've been in the G League, there's going to be a pro day. There's going to be team workouts. And so to not view these couple days or these 5-on-5 scrimmages as the determining factor of your entire NBA journey potentially. just so that they can relax and be themselves, and whatever got them here is what they need to show here. You can't become a completely different guy since 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So if you're a great defender, great rebounder, great teammate, high energy guy, you can't disconnect from that and try to become a completely different dude here. So those are the things we try to really help the players with the most.
So obviously you're overseeing the entire camp, right? We saw you earlier today working with Mark Sears as he was getting his shots up and doing his combine drills. What have you seen? I mean, a lot of people are saying that this is a down year when it comes to the draft. What have you seen out of these players that has impressed you?
I mean, the down year, I think from the generational talent, I think that's fair. I don't know if this particular group of guys possesses that ability, but I'm sure somebody here is going to pull the tape and say that we said that there wasn't, and and there will be somebody out here that becomes that. But what I have seen being here last year and then being here again this year, I thought this group of guys, not any particular individual guy, there's a, similar to generationally, there's a positive energy and a collective spirit that they approached the process with. And when you're in the gym from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., like guys, every group that showed up, every guy tried to give themselves to the process and be a positive impact on the group, and less entitlement, less I shouldn't have to be going through this, and really like going all into what we were asking them to do. And that's all we can ask as a staff and as coaches.
Well, Coach, that leads to the question, as far as we talked about it when the show opened, player participation. Mandated to be here. You don't have to worry about who's doing the drills, who's going to do the interviews, who's doing, you know, the medical stuff. How important has that been to this year's combine?
I think it's vital to the future of the game. Like, we should be able to evaluate the players coming into the league. We understand some of the live action things and not wanting your high talent to maybe sustain an injury or setback that would maybe take them out of summer league or maybe take them out of the start of the season. But just having them here, allowing teams to really sit down with them face to face, to go through the medical process, to go through the testing in front of the teams. Yeah. To me, that's important. And if you want what comes with being in this league, you should want to show up and allow those things to be seen. And you can have strengths, weaknesses, you can have pluses and minuses. But at the end of the day, if you are as great as you feel you are and your representation feels you are, it's okay to come here and be assessed and evaluated. It's just one data point. They're not going to decide if you're a #1 pick in the draft, you're not going to fall to number 41.
You are giving back to the game continually. You're the head coach of Crespi High School out in California. You've got Carter and Zay Barnes on your team. You've got another young man by the name of Peyton White, who's a really good, strong interior presence. You got Joe Sterling. Look at me. I know your team, Coach. But let me ask you this. You're coaching those guys at the high school level. What are you trying to instill in high school players that help them understand this process, not just of getting to here, but the growth and the love of the game to get better at it and appreciate?
Well, I think one of the things that we have really tried to focus on the most is really making sure young players stay attached to this is a team sport. And so much of it has become, which is great, right? To get the guys, whether it's a private trainer, individual training, working out, working on your game, player development, but that disconnect from team success. Yeah. And so at least for us, I've tried to disconnect what our final results are and really try to keep our kids focused on the process. You individually getting better, but how does that translate to team success? And if those two things aren't blending and coming together, you're not as maybe good as you think you are. And when if you're lucky enough to get here, that's what you're going to be evaluated on. When you get here, they already know whether you can shoot or not. But if you're not a great teammate, if you don't come off the game and give eye contact to coaches and high five your teammates going to the bench, check off the list. Yeah. If you don't show up on time, if you're not a professional somewhat, off the list. There's a million guys that can make jumpers, but there's not a million guys that can be consistent in their professionalism. And that's what, even in high school, that's what I'm trying to help them focus on.
D-Fish, we're up against the gun. You know all about TV, so we got a commercial coming soon. But so real quick, I want you to tell me, as the director of this camp, how much have you added that old, because, you know, we're a part of the get off my lawn old school guys. Now, I don't know if you have accepted that, but that's what we are. How much have you interpreted that part of directing this camp with the way the game is played now, this newer generation? How much of a mixture have you put into that?
Well, I think there's a blending of it with like the historical shooting numbers that we have to get, right? Some of the things we track in the combine are non-negotiable. Like, we have to get those things. Where the way the game is being played comes in today's NBA game is in our 5-on-5 setting and in our live action in the 4v4. It has to include quick decisions. It has to include pace and space. We don't want to see our big guys running down the lane trying to post up every time. We don't want to see guards trying to prove that they can finish through 4 people. Paint touches, spray it, pitch it. All of those situations, that's what teams need to be able to evaluate. They don't come to see you individually do your thing. Yeah. It's really about lifting the group. So that's where that blending comes in, and we ultimately, the players are still going to make everything go, but we try our best to give the teams what they need, give you guys what you need, and then make sure the players are in the best position to be successful.
Beautiful. Derek Fisher, 18-year NBA vet. I feel like that doesn't make you old. It just makes you refined.
He's old, Christine.
It makes you experienced.
You can say it.
It makes you
it's
wise.
You,
listen, black don't crack, okay? Nobody knows how old you guys are, okay?
We got beards and hair. Telling the truth.
He's bald. You can't tell.
Look at the beard.
A little salt and peppery. It's fine. It's totally fine. Thanks for joining us, Derek.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you for having me.
By the way, Coach Fisher's team is really strong in one of the best leagues in the country. The same league Bronny James played in, Sierra Canyon, Harvard Westlake, KJ Simpson, Chaminade High School. All of those are in the same league that he's coaching in right now, helping develop the future of our game. I also live about 4 miles away. So
I was going to throw that in there, but I was personally going to leave that out, but I get it.
No, hey, I'll back the bus over myself.
Sean's like, I've been outside your home. I've seen you.
For the record, that's the high rent district too, Christine.
Exactly.
What are you talking about? I know nothing.
He hasn't officially said it, but I think he is very committed to this process. And he showed great yesterday, and he came out. He looked like a prospect. He looks the part. He fits in here with the players that are a part of this combine. And it reminds me of seeing him last year at the Hoops Summit in Portland, where teams were able to see the guys practice and then play the game. And he was every bit of an NBA prospect. A lottery pick? No. Necessarily a future all-star? Probably not. But he's, I think, a legitimate prospect, and that may mean, you know, time in the G League and, you know, working his way through. But the idea that it's an outrageous idea that he's going to play in the NBA and play for an extended period. Listen, he missed 5 months after that heart issue last year. And clearly that impacted his season. And even when you're back healthy, I'm sure there's still a mental block to go through, going through what he did. And so, you know, listen, I think for him, I think things are on a good track right now. That was a very good day in front of all the NBA scouts yesterday.
How does that counterbalance to what we've seen, though, here today? Turnovers, missed shots. He has not scored. He's been slow in reading the floor and delivering the ball on time and on target.
Listen, this is a player who has not played a ton of 5-on-5 game action. He came into a USC team where, you know, he played about 19, 20 minutes a game. And listen, it's going to be important for him to show better than that. I'm certain. Listen, the drills are one thing, but it's another thing to come out and do it in 5-on-5. But I think when you're 19 years old, listen, there are lots of tracks to the NBA. They're not overnight. It doesn't mean he's in an NBA rotation next year. The G League is going to be, I think, very much a part of his.
And it's not just Chicago, is when he goes and does his individual workouts, because what that does, that floor with him, working with him, see how adaptable he is to whatever schemes they have out there, what type of person he is within that locker room, because the reality is he's going to be an end of the bench guy that is, as you said, is going to be a developmental project.
I was lucky enough. I did about 4 or 5 USC games this year. And every time you went and you talked to his teammates, they all said, off the charts good. Off the charts good as far as the teammate goes and how hard he competes, how he interacted. And the one thing I would say about Bronny is the spotlight and the focus on him was unlike any other player in college basketball last year, if we're going to be truthfully honest on it. And part of that is because his dad would go to Twitter and say he could play in the league right now and get 20 minutes a night, or he's better than half the guys I compete against, or whatever those tweets were that were sent out during the course of the year, because then the fans read that and there's somewhat of an unrealistic expectation. But how Bronny managed that, to me, was super impressive. He never allowed that to distract him from his process and his journey.
One of the things, Sean, I ask draft prospects is, do you go on social media and do you ever put your name in the search and see what they say about you? And I asked Bronny that, and he says, yeah. And I said, why'd you do that? He goes, because it fuels me. It fuels me because people have considered me, or have counted me out. They don't think I'm an NBA prospect here, and it only makes me better. I thrive off that.
Well, it's one of the things I want to go back to, and we both had an opportunity to see him at the Nike Hoop Summit, to see him at the McDonald's All-American game last year. I've said it, but I want to see if you feel the same. What is Bronny's greatest asset to his game when he's healthy?
I think it's as a defender. I think he's, I think he showed he could be, I think, an elite defender. He's a ball mover. Certainly, he's going to have to shoot it better, but just his IQ and ability to play, I think as a role player, is there 1 or 2 things you can do really well, right? If you do 5 or 6 things really well, you're an NBA star, you're, a 20-point-a-game scorer. I don't know that that's what he's going to be, but I do think his ability to defend his position, I thought was high level, and I thought that's what people thought his calling card might be at the next level, and what I think they'd hoped it was going to be at USC last year.
There he is out on the court, by the way, green shoes, Bronny, in case you guys are trying to keep your eye on him. He's number 50. I do want to ask, because obviously there was that conversation about LeBron wanting to play with Bronny and teams wanting to draft Bronny so that they can get LeBron. Is that still in the mix? Is that still in the conversation?
Rich Paul told me, his agent, obviously LeBron James's agent, I think back in February or March, wrote about it, and he said it is not a priority. That if organically somehow LeBron and Bronny ended up together, that would be terrific, but it's not the objective. That the objective of this process is to find the situation that best fits Bronny's development. And so I think what Rich Paul and what they're going to do here, Bobby mentioned it, going in to meet with teams and workouts and a chance to sit and visit with him. Is there an organization that has a plan, that has a developmental history, a program that makes sense? The Lakers are not a developmental program. They're a win-now team. And that what Rich said to me was, LeBron wants Bronny to be his own man.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, while we've been talking, Jonathan Mobo, by the way, you see Rob Pelinka, the general manager of the Los Angeles Lakers, but Jonathan Mobo from USF has actually made a couple of really good plays. A touch pass, he showed some versatility. He was a transfer from Missouri State that played for Chris Gerlofson this year. And while he does not stretch the floor by any stretch of the imagination, his ability to read and pass and bring the ball up the floor brings a unique skill set at 6'8", and he's a really good athlete as well.
It's also just a beautiful pass. I'm not sure who it was that threw that. I caught it out the corner of my eye, but beautiful behind the back. On a dime right into the shooting pocket.
And there's Mobo. That's what he does as well as anybody. He rebounds the ball and look at it, 6'8", bring it up, deliver the ball on target to a guy that can really shoot the ball on the outside.
Yeah, that was the pass I'm thinking about. Was that Cam Spencer? Who was it that dropped the dime on this?
Here's another look at it.
Thank you for showing the replay. No, that is not. That's Nikola Jersey, who was able to drop that dime. Beautiful find from him to the corner, right into the shooting pocket, knocking down the 3-ball.
You talk about him. He plays under control, Jersey. Has a knack of scoring, shifting the weight of the defensive player to create a seam. Not an elite level athlete, needs to continue to improve his 3-point shot. Shot only 33% with not many attempts, but does shoot 77% from the free throw line, which means that form-wise, not that far off, could maybe improve that aspect of his game. Played at Serbia, but 6'8", have that kind of feel. You see that European influence that we see with some of the top prospects here.
And the European influence with that behind-the-back pass. You've been watching a lot of Joker running down the lane, finding his shooters right in their shooting pocket.
First name Nikola. He's just it's his namesake.
And from Serbia.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There you go.
That was part of the fun part of this, guys. I'm just being honest with you. Going on Synergy and watching all of these prospects over the last 3 weeks. I spent so much time watching a lot of the international guys. Because obviously college guys we're very familiar with.
Yeah.
But some of these international players, and then trying to decipher too. And I think, Bobby, let me ask you this. How hard is it to decipher, like you guys in the front office, you understand the quality of leagues. For me, I'm watching, I'm like, okay, well, this looks good, but like, who are they playing? Like, how hard is that to evaluate in that process of international prospects?
Well, and that's the other thing, too, is how many minutes are they playing? I mean, you look at, some of these guys' stat lines are playing 13, 14 minutes, averaging 5 or 6 points. Sometimes the team is hiding them from, NBA teams as far as from an exposure standpoint. So I think what you see, and certainly with Jonathan Givony and when we had Mike Schmitz here, they saw them when they were like babies, right? And then they see the development as far as year to year, going from the academy, if they're either at Barcelona or Real Madrid, and then playing at the highest level.
Giannis Antetokounmpo, when teams were trying to evaluate him in the winter of 2012 and the 2013, he was playing in a league in Greece that was essentially a step up as a young player from like a glorified beer league. I mean, the guys they take their shirts off after the game, they have guts hanging out, they're smoking cigarettes, walking out on the court, and so they're trying to figure out, is what we're seeing real with this, that there's something here, but he wasn't playing at a level, and then all of a sudden he started to go to some regional tournaments and get out, and the NBA was chasing him all over Europe.
A glorified beer league, is there anything that's not a glorified beer league?
Bronny just got his first bucket here of the game. A nice drive, shifted the weight of the defensive player, and then looked to attack that seam as a three-point opportunity. Soft touch in the middle of the lane. And, we talked about the size of 6'1.5". One of the things that you have to talk about, if you're going to talk about that, you have to talk about the wingspan, because the wingspan differential actually allows him to get that shot off, actually allows him defensively to continue to impact the game.
All right, we were just talking about Bronny, his teammate, Isaiah Collier, also a 2. It is a good one. And with that, we welcome you back into the Wintrust Arena here at the 2024 NBA Draft Combine. And we've talked a lot about Bronny. We have his teammate, Isaiah Collier, here, also a freshman out of USC. Thank you for joining us. I want to ask you a very important question. I know that people like to typically at combines throw a little curveball at you, and I feel like this question specifically tells me a lot about people. Would you rather be attacked by 50 chickens or 1 bear?
I'll take 50 chickens.
Why is that?
A bear is a killer, so,
chickens can kill you, too.
I mean, it can, but I'll fight back.
Okay, I'm just trying to see what kind of guy you are.
Can you
feel like you can take on a chicken and some bears?
You can't outrun a bear.
You can kick a chicken.
You can kick. I mean, I make it outrunner.
I feel like that means he feels like he's quick. Quick with it? Okay.
I'm with the chickens, too.
End to end from one end of the floor to the other. He'd definitely outrun him. What's this process been like? You and I talked a lot during the season. I think you just talking about the last segment. We had about 4 games together, and I saw you after you came back from your hand injury. And the difference in your game, your commitment to the defensive end of the floor in particular, stood out most. What has been your focus, though, as you've gone through this process leading up to now?
For me, it's just improving every day. There's always question marks in my game. But I'm willing to answer it. So just continue working day by day, and enjoying the process. I mean, just not, not overthinking anything like that. So just enjoying the process, taking it day by day, keeping my head down, keep working.
One of the things for me, we had an opportunity to sit down in the McDonald's All-American game last year, and it's a group of guys that come into the room. And it's you, and it's Ron Holland, a number of different guys. And I was captivated by the fact that you came in and you just kind of took control of the room, right? You were the most vocal of the group. you were joking and playing with your teammates, but you also spoke for your teammates a lot. So that's one of the things that I wanted to see, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you here with us is so everyone can see just how outgoing, how outspoken you are. Is that something that you've been forever, or is that a learned trait?
For me, I mean, I've been like that forever. I mean, I've always been around a lot of people growing up, so large family, things like that. So, I mean, you know, I might be the youngest in the room, but I'm gonna talk a lot for sure.
Well, you got to speak up to be heard, especially when you're the youngest, right?
For sure, definitely. I mean, you got to do that.
I want to ask you, Isaiah, because obviously you played the first 16 games of the season. Then, as Sean mentioned, you had that hand fracture. You came back. You were even better. But obviously, I feel like USC's season didn't probably go as you guys expected when you went over there. So what made you decide that you wanted to go through the draft process, even though you obviously hadn't done what you wanted to do at USC yet?
I mean, I'm a competitor. So, I mean, I feel like I'm still one of the best players in the draft, you know. I mean, for me, it's just, you know, just keep shooting the ball, just trusting my jump shot and things like that. I mean, I know I can answer those questions, so that's why, you know, I decided to enter my name.
Isaiah, every player has, you know, a different stretch of preparation from the end of your college season to draft night. Your situation is a little bit unique that your agent was also a very, very good NBA player, B.J. Armstrong. Is that part of your perspective on choosing an agent who actually played in the league, played championship basketball in the league? How did that influence your thinking?
I mean, I feel like that was one of the best decisions I ever made. Just, you know, B.J. being at PG in Chicago, I mean, it's great. So, I mean, you know, we've been walking around since we landed here, you know, B.J. a legend around here. So, I mean, I seen it real fast. You know, I didn't really get to see him, you know, him play like that, but you know, you hear all the noise and things like that. So, I mean, it was great, and then just learning from him. I mean, it's definitely been a great advantage for me. So yeah.
I'm gonna take it back to the origin now. Wheeler High School. All right. Some stars have come out of Wheeler.
Yeah.
Sharif Abdur-Rahim, Jaylen Brown. Who's the best player to ever come out of Wheeler High School?
You know, I got to put myself up there.
There you go. That was the answer he gave me a year ago, which is part of the reason I love it.
By the way, that would be the same answer Corey had for any gym he's ever walked into.
That's why I love him.
You know, I got to put myself up there, you know. I mean, I feel like I brought the most state championships to his school. So, yeah.
Winning matters.
Yeah, it does.
It absolutely does.
You dealt with the pressure because, by the way, a year ago this time, you were the guy everybody thought would be #1. How have you handled that pressure? How have you handled this process to kind of continue to try to prove some now naysayers may be wrong and get where you want to be eventually?
I mean, I don't really see it as pressure. I mean, it's basketball. I let it do this every day. So, I mean, hey, so, I mean, I deal with it. So, it's just like, just approaching it. I mean, it's a business now. So, you got to approach it every day. Like, I mean, like your job, basically. So, I mean, I just enjoying it all.
Who's your comp? Right now, if you said, okay, if I was going to make an NBA comp for myself.
Sean loves a comp.
I love the comp. Everybody loves the comp. You love a comp.
No, I don't love comp.
You don't.
Go ahead.
I don't either.
There's only
So
one
I can't really compare myself to anybody like that. I mean, whoever, you know what I'm saying, get that. I don't know, myself. That's my comp.
Let's talk about the A. Let's talk about the A and the guys who've come out of the A recently. Of course, you got Ant-Man, you got Scoot, you got all those different guys. How are you similar and how are you different from the guys, the guards who have come out of your area?
Just having that dog mentality. I think that's what we do down there. I mean, you see Anthony Edwards right now in the playoffs, killing. So, I mean, just having that competitive spirit to just, you know, kill anything in front of you. I mean, that's how I grew up. So, I mean, that's what I'm looking forward to do.
Is there one player, you're watching the playoffs, you're watching regular season, where there's a point guard out there doing something that you say, that's something I want to add to my game. That's something that I'm watching tape on that I can get better at that, and they're doing it really well right now?
I mean, I could say two players, Anthony Edwards and Jalen Brunson. Anthony Edwards just being that two-way player, and Jalen Brunson, you know, just getting a lot of paint touches playing off too. I mean, that's very important, you know, as far as, you know, being a guard in the NBA. You know, you got a lot of shot blockers and things like that, but you got to be able to finish and make shots as well.
Right.
Like I go back to Anthony Edwards, he's making tough shots right now, so it's great.
Making everything.
Yeah.
All right, Isaiah Collier, he got that dog in him. He's excited to be out here at the 2024 NBA Draft Combine. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome back to the 2024 NBA Draft Combine here in the Wintrust Arena. Team St. Andrews up 78 68-64 with 5 minutes left in the matchup.
I'm just pointing this out. They got Jonathan Mobo bringing the ball up almost every single time right now. I think that bodes really well for him, showing some versatility for executives. But we had Isaiah Collier that was just joining us. And guys, like, to me, when I watched him play, the thing that stood out most is his ability to attack and get downhill, his upper body strength to absorb contact and be able to finish through that contact. That's what separates him from a lot of other guards that are in this draft.
I'll ask you this, Sean. You covered USC more than any of us. What is his strength? Well, you just gave us a strength. What is his biggest weakness right now?
Twofold. One is his commitment to wanting to be an elite level defensive player. When he first played his first couple of games, it looked like he was allergic if he got into a stance. It got better. It got better.
A lot for high-level, high school guys coming to college and really honestly having to play defense for the first time and being demanded to play defense.
Once he came back from his broken hand, that effort improved a lot. The second thing is his shot. His mechanics are off a little bit. The consistency is definitely not there to where you want it to be for him to be able to stretch the floor. Otherwise, you're looking at a situation defensively where you're going to gap him off like he's Russell Westbrook a little bit at the next level. And all of a sudden, what does that do? It clogs the lane, and it makes other players on the floor less effective while you also become less effective. And that's my one area where I think he's really got to improve to be the player I think he can be at the next level.
I have my own answer, but I want to ask, of course, the insiders and in the upper management, what area do guys normally improve the most with in the NBA?
Well, I mean, it's certainly shooting.
There you go.
I mean, that comes with it. And I think the better the players around you as far as from your decision making. And I think when you look at Collier, Jonathan has him at number 11 right now, which is Chicago. Certainly guard heavy, Kobe White, Alex Caruso. That's the decision general managers will go through as far as best available. Someone who was number 1, I think, in the mock draft last offseason before school started, versus kind of in a need base there. So you could certainly see him falling in that range.
And you said it right at the top, defensive intensity of having to play at a high level defensively. Now in college, it's 30+ nights a year. In the NBA or the G League initially, it's 50, 60, or 80 nights a year. And it's especially the great offensive players have been able to, get by without it. But to be, you've got to be a two-way player in this league. There's very few people who are just, going to be gifted enough to play one end. To be able to only play the offensive end of the floor, and I think that's an adjustment for all these young players.
Corey, to your point about improving the shooting, I remember when Kawhi Leonard got drafted, and I believe it was Coach Van Gundy said, not a good shooter. Look at his numbers at San Diego State, and how much that's improved over the course because of his commitment to wanting to be great and wanting to be elite.
They were going into the lockout, and you weren't allowed. Coaches, organizations, and players couldn't connect before the lockout. They rushed Kawhi Leonard into the gym with Chip Engelland, the Spurs shooting coach, and gave him a bunch of things to go into the lockout with by himself to work on. And he came out of that a much different player, much different shooter.
All right, I want to get down to Jonathan Givony to talk about a player that we haven't talked about that much, number 84, Baylor Scheierman, out of Creighton. He has 11 points for Team St. Andrews. JG, what you got?
Guys, Baylor Scheierman has been the best player on the floor today from what I've seen. We all know he's one of the best shooters in this draft class. He made 110 threes in 35 games this year at Creighton. He's a versatile shooter, can come off screens, pull up off the dribble. He put on a show yesterday in the drills. We all knew he could do that. But today, playing with great energy defensively, he's fighting over screens, he's getting after people, he's generated multiple turnovers, making great passes. He's got a terrific feel for the game. There's some real buzz about Baylor Scheierman here in this arena. I walked the concourse at halftime. People are starting to say, why can't this guy be a first-round pick? He's 6'7". He can make shots. He's got a great feel. Everybody in the NBA is looking for that kind of player right now. You can plug him into an NBA rotation immediately. So I think a lot of guys have really helped themselves actually today. KJ Simpson, Jonathan Mobo, Isaac Jones, AJ Johnson. But Baylor Scheierman has been the big standout for me so far.
I agree wholeheartedly, JG. And one of the things I think he showed a lot yesterday, even when he was off the floor, just walking around on the concourse, going up, introducing himself to people and having conversations, showing off his personality as well.
Could he be a Joe Ingles type?
That's a great comp. I like that. Yeah, lefty.
That's a very tall task. Joe Ingles has been a very good NBA player for a really, really long time, and he's elite defensively.
Well, that's
I think
where he's
that's
not.
the struggle where Scheierman
but
has.
Athletically wise, similar athletes. And his ability to shoot and his feel for the game offensively is at such a high clip that makes up for some of those deficiencies at the defensive end.
All right, we got more scrimmage coming
up. I know
up.
you do.
Right after the break, you know he hates comps. All right, we're not going to go there.
Is he Corey Alexander? That's the question that Corey wants.
Welcome back inside the Wintrust Arena here in Chicago, Illinois. That guy, he's feeling pretty good. I mean, he got the #1 overall draft pick.
He could play.
Obviously very excited to be here and watch some guys. We got Sean Marion in the building.
Matrix.
Okay.
He could play, man. UNLV running Rebel.
Dan Presti also here.
There's my guy. He got a big win. Hey, he got a big win last night too. Was excited to be here today.
And we also saw Rob Pelinka here, checking out some guys. The Lakers GM and Danny Ainge.
Let me tell you guys this. My first playoff action, Danny Ainge was on the call. That tells you how long ago that was. He was doing TV before
he's done literally
Hall of Fame.
He's done literally every job.
He absolutely has, and got a chance to talk with Danny yesterday. Of course, still a much beloved lifer in this game. I just always like going back to the '80s highlights and seeing him getting a fight in every other game in the playoffs when he was with Boston and in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, BYU ties with Danny Ainge. Let me ask you, Coach Young. Is that shocking to you, considering how many NBA jobs that he was he looked like he was in line to be a head coach at the NBA, and he goes to BYU.
And he would have been. And I think in almost every case that I could cite, if a coach has a choice between the NBA and college basketball, he's going to choose the NBA. And Kevin Young made a choice that was, I think, certainly a choice about winning, that he could win big there, but about his family and about, you mentioned Danny Ainge, I saw him last night. We were talking about Kevin Young there, but, Ryan Smith, the owner of the Utah Jazz, who's a big supporter of BYU. They have all the resources there to win big, but there's no question Kevin Young was in this coaching cycle. He would have been an NBA head coach if he wanted. He chose to go to the Big 12, and I think, this is a coach who, really respected by players, came up through the G League, had success there. Devin Booker was a big fan of his. Their time in Phoenix, he's really going to be able to sell NBA to high school and of course, portal prospects.
And Woj, let me ask you this. Speaking of Kevin Young, he was actually a candidate last year for the job in Phoenix, right, before they brought in Frank Vogel. And did that have anything to do with the holdup in letting Coach Vogel go, or nothing with that?
Kevin Young was already gone. They kept Kevin Young as the highest paid assistant in the league, $2 million plus last season. And, he was certainly involved in the head coaching openings that were in this cycle, but he was already gone to BYU before then. And Kevin Young made a decision he wanted to coach at BYU, not with the Suns, not anywhere else. So there was not a correlation there.
We just saw Justin Edwards hit a 3. That's 8 points in the last minute and a half from him. And he's another one of these prospects that Jonathan has in the late first round that's actually out there here playing. So here's a thing where he can actually help himself. Has him going to a young Washington team at pick 26. One of the top recruits going into Kentucky last year, and certainly had an uneven year as far as where his playing minutes were.
I'm not sure where he ended up, Bobby, but he was the #1 player in the country for a long stint last season. And ended the year in the top 3, no doubt about it. And went to Kentucky, and honestly, it just didn't seem to be a good fit. He was the guy that was kind of left out because you have Antonio Reeves back, who was going to be your leading scorer, and they play a very similar position. So Justin Edwards coming in and having to make that adjustment of being a freshman in a completely different game, got off to a slow start. Had a couple of big games at Kentucky, but for the most part, he would probably look at it as a disappointing season.
Well, his best basketball is still ahead of him, clearly. And I think the NBA game really suits him well. Open floor in transition is where he really thrives. He's got the long wingspan. He's really good on the offensive glass. And when the ball's in his hands, the open floor, really good. But when it gets bogged down in the half-court set, that's where he struggled a little bit offensively.
And the fact that Kentucky was let's just say it, they were a bad defensive team this year, right? So with that being the case, he doesn't get the reputation of being a defender. No. Let's say he goes to his other option at Tennessee with Rick Barnes. just by association alone, do NBA people look at him as a viable defensive candidate in the draft just on association alone with that program?
Well, here's the example. Dalton Connect from who went to Tennessee. He went to Tennessee. He transferred there because of Rick Barnes and learning how to play defense.
Yeah. Well, and I think that becomes the question, too, when we start talking about Rob Dillingham, which we'll do probably a little bit later on. But this Kentucky team this year, in the games that they lost, go to UNC Wilmington. You don't have to go to the A&M games. You can look at both those twice and look at what Wade Taylor and Tyrese Radford was able to accomplish. They averaged, I think, 54 points per game against Kentucky this year combined between the two of them. But UNC Wilmington attacked them off the bounce consistently. And that becomes the concern, I think, a little bit, not only for Kentucky fans last year watching that team play, but I think for NBA executives who are going, okay, was it an issue of they didn't want to? They didn't know how to? Or can they do it and they just didn't show it? Like, I mean, and that's the opportunities here. That's the opportunities in the one-on-one workouts to kind of show that they want to compete at that end of the floor.
I've known Rob since he was probably 12 years old. His best defense is his offense. That's always been the case. He's always been an elite scorer. The other end of the floor never interested him much. And again, John Calipari, traditionally has been a great defensive coach. That's the reason why they've been able to win at Kentucky. But when you've got so many young players and you're looking at how do we get these guys to play, you play to their strength. And their strength is what they do offensively. Yeah. And they just did not, bring it on the defensive end this year.
Yeah, it was definitely a down year for Kentucky. Obviously, a lot of guys wanted that team to do a little bit better this season. Another guy that we're going to talk about and hopefully talk to in a little bit is Antonio Reeves. You were talking about him at the beginning of the show. What have you seen out of him that's impressed you so far in this scrimmage?
He's doing the same things that he's done to get him here. Yep. He's scoring. He's being aggressive on the offensive end of the floor, putting points on the board and winning. And that's always going to be important in my mind, especially when you consider the fact that guys who make winning important are the type of people that NBA executives want on their roster. Yep. It's important to win no matter how well you play. I mean, they don't want the guy who walked away and said, well, I had 25, but we lost. They're not interested in those guys, right, Woj?
Yeah, and I think, whether it's guys in the G League, whether it's guys here, they want to see efficiency. They want to see you. There's probably not anybody in the gym today that's going to necessarily be, there may be one or two, who's going to be an all-star, who's going to be an all-NBA player. And they always emerge out of here. 95% of the league are role players. And, just because a guy in the G League can have 35 and 40-point nights, Bobby, when you're calling a guy up in the G League when you were in New Jersey, Brooklyn, you're not asking him to come play that role. You're asking him to come defend, rebound, make an open shot when the ball's kicked to him.
Well, even you watched the Dallas-Oklahoma City game last night, Cason Wallace was a lottery pick, but the role for him at Kentucky is a lot different than what he is in Oklahoma City. Yep. 2 corner threes, defending at the end of the game here. And those are the type of moments that you're trying to just kind of plug and play type guys.
Efficiency is what you talked about, Woj. How about 46% from 3? How about 53% on his floaters? I mean, those are the efficient numbers that you start to look at. How did he score? How did he get to his spot to score? And how often could he get there? And Antonio Reeves did an outstanding job of that this year at Kentucky.
And Bobby just said it with Cason Wallace and Oklahoma City. A rookie on the floor in the conference semifinals. Why? Because he's guarding at a level very few players have it all in this postseason. That's what's keeping him on the floor and makes open shots. For a rookie to be in those games playing big minutes against, the kind of veteran stars Dallas has, you don't take that for granted in the NBA.
I had them in game 1 of that series. I asked Mark Daigneault simply, who is going to guard Kyrie? We know who's going to guard Luka. And he said, Jalen Williams, Cason Wallace. Those are going to be the guys we depend on to be able to go out and slow down.
We've really got a foul with 0.4 seconds left.
Absolutely.
What are we doing?
Absolutely.
Can we get a review just to make me feel like it's a college basketball game again?
All right, the game is over. Team St. Andrews winning 89-81. Hopefully we have a player of the game very shortly. There is Bronny James. He played 19 minutes, 4 points, 4 rebounds. I mean, an okay showing. Sean?
I think it left a lot to the imagination. He didn't shoot the ball with any kind of efficiency. He struggled with some turnovers and some reads. Defensively, he was solid. He was okay, and as Woj says, for him to play at this level, I agree. He's got to be a really good defensive player. You want to see more.
I think the win for Bronny is the fact that he's on this floor competing right now. I think that's what it's all about. We've seen guys who did not play well in the combine go on to be drafted and be very good NBA players. JG told us about Josh Hart.
Yeah.
Most important about Bronny is, does he love it enough to get out here and compete and show everyone that he wants to be a part of this?
All right, we now take it down to the player of the game, Antonio Reeves, 17 points in this matchup. So we know you're used to getting buckets, right? You average 20.2 points per game when you're at Kentucky. What makes this game a little bit different? How did it feel out there?
It felt really good. You know, teammates got me involved, you know, early throughout the game, and I just let it come to me. You know, guys knocked down shots. I was feeding guys out there too, and you know, we just competed out there, gave it all we got.
Antonio, I went to dinner with your guy, Rob Smith, your high school coach at Simeon High School last night. Yep. I was supposed to deliver a message to you that you better play well, but I didn't have to get it across to you because you took care of business. You had to do that here at home, right?
Yeah, for sure. You know, hometown, you know, so came in here, did what I had to do, and, you know, just get ready for tomorrow. So.
What has this process been like for you, and what was it that you were hoping to showcase today in front of all these scouts and general managers?
Just my level of competitiveness, defensive and offensive, but mainly defensive. Just going out there, try to get through screens, try to play hard and physical, and, you know, try to get as much rebounds as possible. Try to get down there, be down there with the big guys too. So.
Hey, Antonio, how about the challenge as far as playing with all these new teammates right now? A little bit different than at Kentucky, where you're basically a team is assembled, and now you got to go out and perform, as I say, the ultimate job interview in front of all these people.
Yeah, for sure. You know, a lot of new faces, you know, out here, you know, different guys out here. So, you know, we just all got to come together, you know, compete, give it all we got, and cheer each other up as well. You know, we all don't know each other, but we trying to win a basketball game at the end of the day.
All right, a lot of guys don't know what I'm, oh, sorry. Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Antonio. My ears got cut out. I do want to say, it's clear you've been putting in work. The last time I saw you, you had a fresh twist, and I know your teammates were calling you out about that. I see you've been putting in work, not even worried about the hair. You're just out here
nah, not at all.
taking care of business.
Nah.
I love that. So great to see you, Antonio. Good job today.
All right, thank you.
Pretty solid showing from Antonio Reeves. He's a vet, right? He's been in a little Alex Sarr, Donovan Clingan.
Zach Edey running the three-quarter court was my
perfect.
favorite part of yesterday.
What was it?
Zach Edey running the three-quarter court yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
That was my favorite part.
All right, we got another scrimmage coming up here. Reminder that the current NBA assistant coaches are the head coaches. Here we have Jason Love from the Philadelphia 76ers, Team Love. Let's look at the roster really fast. And Corey Alexander, who are you looking at when it comes to this matchup? Oh, just kidding. Sean Farnham, it's you.
Yeah, I'm going with Keyshawn Johnson. Defensive-minded player out of San Diego State that then transferred to Arizona, grew offensively throughout the course of the season, showed the ability to knock down the three-point shot. Yesterday, tied Reed Sheppard with a 42-inch vertical leap, so elite-level athleticism with his combination to defend. He's going to try to find a home in the NBA.
On the other side of this matchup, we got Jonah Hurskew from the Portland Trail Blazers. He'll be coaching up this squad. Boogie Ellis is on this team. You were talking about USC players earlier. Who are you looking at in this one?
I'm looking at Trenton Flowers, young man who actually went to summer school at the University of Louisville, was enrolled in Louisville, headed to play there for Kenny Payne last season. After summer school, he joined us at the Jason Tatum Elite Camp and then went to Australia, decided to give up his college eligibility, go play overseas, make his money. Also tied Reed Sheppard and Keyshawn Johnson with a 42-inch vertical leap yesterday.
We like athleticism at the desk.
Absolutely.
Well, we were talking about this earlier, the change in the format, everybody being here. What have you heard from the executives, the scouts, and the feel and the sense of what this combine looks like and feels like this with the changes?
Well, the league for a very long time wanted more access to the players, most of which they're physicals. There was a time where players and agents could keep players' medical physicals from certain teams. So if they had a preference about where a player might be drafted, you know, there might be teams, say, in their range where they've kept the physical away from, and that can't stop a team from drafting a player, but it does give you pause when you don't have all that information. Now, it has to be made available to all the teams. Now, everybody doesn't have to scrimmage, but they have to be at the combine, you know, be a part of the athletic testing, the drills, and so they're able to see more players in competitive environments, and there's more access to players in interviews. There are more, you know, I heard some grumbling among the agents about some of the players at the very top had to do more interviews with teams and probably were going to have an opportunity to draft them.
Well, the big thing, too, is with the interviews, and I learned this in New Jersey and Brooklyn, is that even if you don't have a top pick or lottery pick, you're going to ask to meet with Donovan Clingan, because you're not going to get him in your building, and you can store that information down the road when he becomes a free agent, let's say 8 or 9 years down the road, or you want to get him in a trade. And then just going back to the medical, we went through that in New Jersey, where, you know, a guy that's on your board, all of a sudden he falls to you.
Right.
So if a guy's the 10th best prospect and you're picking 21, and you couldn't get him in your building, or you couldn't get the medical on him, now you're trying to make a decision. Do we draft a player based on what we see on the court without having any medical history on that player?
But it is very interesting, the rules that they made at the Combine when it comes to the tiers that players fall in, right? When you look at Alex Sarr, only the top 10 teams can look at his medical records. Why did they decide to kind of tier things out so that teams or players in the top 10 can't get those medical records to every single team that's picking in the draft this season?
I think it's something of a compromise, but, you know, there aren't necessarily 10 teams are going to have an opportunity to draft them, but, you know, you can move up in the draft. You could be at 7, 8, or 9 and move up. All of a sudden, a player drops. Again, I think it's more than. I think the agents have always felt, and the players, but the agents who are controlling this, that they have so little leverage in this process as a player, and it took away some of their leverage. There was just some strategic, a strategic element of it that agents could sell to players when they're recruiting them, and then when they have them, about maybe trying to steer them where they would like to go, or at least increase the percentages. I think some of that's been nullified.
And Christine, another one of the things too that Woj didn't mention, because he can't, but I can.
Well,
many of these teams are going to be making trades, and that's often a possibility. So some of those groups that are further down want to see those medical records, because they're going to be calling Woj and seeing if they can get with the people to make a trade for some of these higher picks and getting with that group. So that's part of the reason why they made those records available for so many different people.
As we take a look at the guys that are out on the floor, by the way, right now, a couple guys that stand out to me outside of the two that we mentioned beforehand. One is Jamal Shead, and the ball movement, the leadership, the coach on the floor, and obviously we all know he can defend at an elite level playing for Kelvin Sampson at Houston. You see Keyshawn Johnson get up into the rim and be able to finish. The other one is Jackson Robinson, number 2 in the white jersey, currently at BYU. Maybe could end up at Kentucky if he goes back to college, but he came off the bench this year, and he is a bucket. And right on cue, he drops one in. But he came off the bench at BYU, accepted that role. He needs to improve defensively in his ability to finish around the paint. But one of the things that he does so well, and elite scorers can do this, is he knows exactly the spot that he can get to on the floor where he can elevate up and finish over the top of his defensive player.
Sean, break down for our viewers what you talked about with guys who are currently in the portal, but also in the NBA draft. Give them some dates, et cetera, as far as when they have to make that decision as to when they go back.
Well, the date is coming up after this is over.
May 29th.
May 29th, yes.
Yeah, the 29th is when they've got to make the decision. So you're going to go after you're done with the combine here. You and your agent are going to get all the information, compile it together, and try to make what you feel is the best decision for yourself. And for Jackson Robinson, there really isn't a bad way to go, because goes in the league, probably is a second-round pick, but a guy that could maybe be a G League and then bounce back and forth, or he goes to Kentucky and he makes a ton of NIL money with Mark Pope.
Well, that's it, Sean, and you said it. What has transformed the dynamic between staying in the draft and going back is being able to go in the portal or staying where you are and getting so much more NIL than would be available to you as a two-way player in the NBA, which is, Bobby, what, about $500,000 deal?
Yeah, it's about $550.
And there was a time where, you know, where people said, well, why is that guy going into the draft if he's not going to get drafted, or he's not a first-round pick or a second? Well, you know, he could make $550,000 by spending significant part of the year in the G League and also be on that NBA roster. But players are making, there are players making $1 million plus this season in college basketball who we're not even really sure are going to be NBA players. And so, there's a lot of value in exhausting all of your college eligibility because it may be the biggest paycheck you ever get.
We saw a lot of players do that. Obviously, Armando Bacot is one that comes to mind, taking advantage of the NIL and just making a ton of money while they're in their respective college teams. I want to go back to Jamal Shead a little bit, Sean Farnham, because he's the winningest player in Houston history. Obviously, he was huge, as you mentioned. Who would you compare him to?
Well, first of all, you just got to remember he went down with an ankle injury. If that doesn't happen, Houston is likely a Final Four team. That's how good Houston was all season long. But you look at the comparison for him, I go back to my teammate in college, Earl Watson.
Good one.
Earl Watson had a ton of intangibles. He was a great coach on the floor, obviously became a head coach in the NBA with the Phoenix Suns, been an assistant coach there, but tenacious at the defensive end, a pass-first point guard that really facilitated and helped the teammates around him be successful, and most importantly to Earl was he wanted to win. And when I look at Jamal Shead, he has all of those attributes. Look at his rebounding numbers. You could talk about his size. Yeah, he was able to rebound the ball. He found assists. He made his teammates better. He shot with efficiency. He knew how to put his teammates, which at times Houston was an offensively challenged team this year in college basketball, but he put them in the best situation to be successful. And when he went out, they lost the head of their offense and the head of their defense.
Sean,
and spending time with him at the Big 12 tournament, to me, the intangibles off the charts. He's a 15-year guy that's going to be your backup point guard for all 15 years.
Sean, I hate comps, but I don't hate that one. I believe that's a great comp for Jamal Shead. And what I hate about comps is oftentimes when you're comparing people to all-stars and to generational talents. That's the problem that gets me with comps. But that one is a great one because you're talking about Earl, who was a great pro for a very long time. And I agree, Jamal Shead can be one of those guys. But what's most important about Jamal Shead is exactly what he's doing right now. Competing. You're bringing a competitor into your organization if you draft this young man, or as Woj says, you just sign him to a two-way. You don't have to be drafted to be a big part of an organization. Look at Jose Alvarado, whose two-way was converted to a standard contract in order for him to be able to play in the playoffs 3 seasons ago.
Well, look at Memphis, what Memphis was able to do this year with Gigi Jackson, who they drafted in the 2nd round, and Vince Williams Jr., 2 players that, certainly benefited by a lot of injuries of that Grizzlies team, and both players, I think Gigi we could see him on all rookie, maybe even 2nd team here, who played really well. And what that does is now when Ja Morant comes back and when Marcus Smart comes back and Desmond Bane is healthy, Brandon Clark, that allows you to kind of develop a bench from there.
Listen, it's always been important to find players that you don't need to use draft picks for, that you can sign, develop, but especially now in this league with the new collective bargaining agreement and teams who are so limited in the ways that they can add to their roster, like the Phoenix Suns, the second apron. Can they find a player in this process who they don't have to use a draft pick on, who they can develop, and can you find some role players, some potential rotation players down the league when you can't necessarily get them in free agency or trades, and you don't have any draft picks because you've gassed them all in trades for a Kevin Durant or a Bradley Beal.
Well, here's an example: is Boston. Boston can spend on their main guys, but when you go out and get Sam Hauser, making the minimum to come off your bench, that kind of defeats the apron rules as far as finding those under-the-radar players.
I forgot to say wahoo wah when you said Sam Hauser, by the way, Bobby.
All right, they're going to take a break, and we're going to take a quick break with Team Love up 14-10. We'll be back right after this. On we go. Kevin Durant looks about the same. Not too different, right? Still lanky a little bit. He's gained a little weight. But this is him at the 2007 NBA Draft Combine. Obviously, he's made a few stops along the way, but he's now with the Suns. And it was a rough season for the Suns, to say the least. Obviously, this big three did not do what they expected to do on the court this season. So they have a few things to figure out. They have the 22nd pick in the draft at the moment. Woj, when you look at this Suns team, what do you think that they'll do this offseason?
I think they'll continue to try to play the minimum contract game and, see if they can sell guys on ideally being part of a championship contender, although they haven't shown yet that they're really a championship contender. They're very limited by the collective bargaining rules and the salary cap about the changes they can make to that roster. There's not the dramatic change that the Suns made was a coach. They fired Frank Vogel. They've hired Mike Budenholzer. And I think, listen, there are some things they can do, and Bobby can run through it, but they made a decision when they traded for Durant and then when they traded for Beal that this was largely their team. And then obviously the trade that brought in Yusuf Nurkic, they were part of that bigger deal with Milwaukee and Portland. Their roster is kind of their roster right now.
Yeah, I mean, what you'll probably see is, certainly we'll see what happens with their pick, that 22, is that Royce O'Neal, who's a free agent, and it's similar to what happened with Grayson Allen. The cost to retain your own free agents is significant. Grayson Allen signed a 4-year, $70 million contract, which essentially cost Phoenix $70 million this year. And you look at Royce O'Neal as a free agent, you bring him back on a $10 million contract. That's another $16 million. So you're continually doubling down on your roster.
We saw James Jones there a little bit ago. Obviously, he went a little viral not a couple weeks ago, talking about how they haven't yet unlocked Kevin Durant. No team has been able to do that. But Matt Ishbia has said that they're keeping their big three together, so that's the expectation, as you mentioned, Bobby.
I think, yeah, I mean, you almost have to. I mean, I lived through it in Brooklyn. I mean, we gave up everything in the Pierce Garnett trade, and then we lose to Miami in the second round, and ownership says, we're too expensive. Let's move. Let's not bring back Paul Pierce, and let's trade Kevin Garnett. And then you're dealt with giving Boston the third and first pick in the draft. I've lived through it. Is it the right way to do it? Probably not. It probably is. There probably does need a little bit of a reset. But listening to ownership, I'm not anticipating him doing an about face all of a sudden, admitting that they were wrong as far as doing the Beal trade, going out and getting Durant.
To me, with all of the talk that we're talking about as far as roster and the constraints that they have on their roster, the most important thing by far was getting the right coach. The most important thing by far is getting that three to be successful and work to the best that big three possibly can. Do you feel like they did that, Woj?
Mike Budenholzer is an outstanding coach. Won almost 70% of his games in Milwaukee, won a championship. But look at these playoffs, guys. Look at the teams that are at the top of this league right now. They not only have star players, they have balance, they have depth. And this is a league now where if you put a big three together and you have to do it by trade, and you trade for two of them, you typically will not have enough draft picks, role players to support them. Denver, they drafted that group and then brought in role players around them, had assets to go make a trade for an Aaron Gordon. Minnesota traded for one of them in Rudy Gobert, but they drafted Jaden McDaniels, and they signed Naz Reid as an undrafted player.
Oklahoma City got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and all those picks, and look what they've been able to build.
They got an all-NBA player in a deal where they were getting all the assets when he was 19-20. So the Suns model is built for a different time when an owner who is willing to pay luxury tax to the moon could pay it and still be able to put a roster around them. But what the league wanted was to spread players around to small markets. They wanted to end that financial gulf between the big spending teams and the small markets. And what it's going to do is spread players around the league. Pascal Siakam, instead of ending up in a trade in New York or LA or Bay Area, he's in Indiana because they can pay him.
On the court right now, by the way, is also Boogie Ellis, number 9 in gray. He's hit a couple of three-pointers already. Boogie came out here in the G League camp and was making shots. An experienced player from USC, Bobby. What?
I saw him Saturday. He was terrific. 21 points on the floor. Kind of ran a team. Second day, a little bit kind of took a back seat. But he was really good, and this is kind of where this could help him here.
Yeah, like how much does this help? Like I mean, you were able to show well in the G League camp. You come out here, you're starting this game, you nail a couple three-pointers, you go and sit to the bench. Like, how much did the scouts go? Wait, hold on. He did it then. He's doing it now again.
I just think the ability to run a team. I think the ability to kind of run a team here. As I said, we've seen it in the past with point guards. Point guards, I think, benefit probably the most out of this. I think some of the bigs probably less.
Well, my mic got cut out. I was about to talk about Woj. We've seen some healing here today. Bobby Marks actually mentioned the trade. So by him talking about that, we've seen healing. We've come a long way.
Bobby's got a lot of mileage. He's given us a lot of content out of that trade.
Does my wife want to be me talking about it? No. It's therapeutic. Hey, we have a 10-year statute of limitation. We're past
There you go.
That happened in 2013.
There you go. We're now past that. The 10 years is up. My guy Bobby's healed.
Did you want to say anything else about that Phoenix Suns conversation? I know I heard the moment where your mic unplugged, and I was like, I think he's not going to be able to say anything.
It was actually me.
I was only talking about Bobby.
Bobby pulled it.
Bobby's like, he's not talking about anything.
Bobby did that on purpose. All right, so 21-16, Team Herscu up here so far. What have you seen out of these players out on the court so far?
Well, I think this game has actually been played. They had a little bit of an advantage as far as I feel, because they saw the first game played, and the times the first game had that pressure of trying to do too much, speeding up, and trying to prove all that you can do, and sometimes exposing yourself and your weaknesses. I thought that showed out in the first game. I think this game so far, you're seeing better ball movement, value of the basketball, and staying within their capabilities.
I always go back and look at, and most important to me is seeing the guys who are out there and who are competing. You see Jamal Shead get at it right away. He doesn't know any other way to play, but that's the most important thing for me, is to see how these guys approach the game from a mental aspect, more so than how many shots they make.
Yep.
Only 58 seconds left in this first quarter. Still plenty of basketball to play. As we mentioned, obviously these guys hoping to raise their draft stock a little bit. But when you think about the pressure that comes with games like this, I feel like when players go out there, especially yesterday when you see them going through the drills, they're in their heads a lot. So there has to be an X factor when coaches and scouts are looking at the players out there. Bobby, you know that they're overthinking it a lot. So how does that play into how you evaluate players out there?
Well, I think it's the ultimate body of work. All these scouts have seen them 30 times during this year or 100 times during. It's like taking a test, right? You don't want to study the night before the test and then all of a sudden expect to pass. So you're doing your legwork, and this is just, I think this is part of it. I think a lot of it, what teams are looking for, certainly the medical and certainly the interviews, and then when you can get them in your own practice facility as far as their individual workout.
I think the big thing, too, is a guy like A.J. Mitchell from Santa Barbara. I think he's going to play in the NBA. I think he's probably a second-round pick. But, you know, for a kid from Santa Barbara, they don't get to play against Trey Alexander from Creighton. They don't get to play against Jamal Shead on a consistent basis. And here's an opportunity for this young man to come out here and step up and be like, okay, on the biggest stage that means the most to my life, of what I've dreamt about since I'm 8 years old, I'm going to do it with a bunch of guys I've never played with before, and I'm going to try to lock up two of the better guards in college basketball.
30 pounds since he got there. He was 170 when he got on campus. He's 200 pounds right now. He's kind of developed into his body, and you know, goes to Santa Barbara kind of under the radar a little bit here, but certainly could help him as far as standing out.
Joe Pasternak did a great job with him, the head coach at Santa Barbara, and I talked with his agent Todd Ramazar yesterday, who was my teammate at UCLA, and Todd was saying, look, I had Andrew Nembhard in this draft, and I feel like A.J. Mitchell is going to be a guy that once they leave the combine, teams are going to be like, I want to see more of him. I want to bring him in and start to explore what he truly can bring to a team.
I have a question for Bobby. In evaluating prospects, you scouted and were in the front office, you know, the pre-portal era.
Yeah.
How different do you think it is in trying to get a sense of a player if he's played at 3 different schools or 3 different coaches, 3 different systems? Is it actually helpful to see him in multiple situations, or would you like to see more of that straight line growth in one place?
Well, I think certainly being at one place helps as far as, and certainly if there's some continuity there. But I think certainly if you're at a small division, if you go to Delaware, to Wake Forest, to Duke, there's a little bit of a different level of competition as far as where you were and then kind of where you are right now.
All right, still 3 more quarters left in this scrimmage. When we come back from break, Wizards GM Will Dawkins.
Together in D.C.
It's working out pretty well for those guys in Oklahoma City right now.
I'm very impressed with them. Keep wishing them good luck.
There you go.
Well, when you were at the top of the draft, the ability to really, be able to look at the whole landscape,
yeah,
and how many players that you might really consider it to. And in some years, you're going to bring in guys who might really fit more, 4, 5, 6, 7. But this seems to be a unique year where you could make a case for a number of guys at that spot,
yeah,
with an open mind about, forget the mock drafts, forget the conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
Is this I thought maybe as unsettled of a top of the draft since maybe 2013.
Yeah, I remember that.
Where the best player went 15, Giannis Antetokounmpo. The next best player in that draft went 27, Rudy Gobert.
I think what you're seeing in comparing those two drafts, I think it's every draft has their own players in it. We had a really good lottery night to stay at 2 where we were at. It gives us a lot of options. As you know, personally, we're not going to stick to the mock drafts. We're going to do our own thing and do what's best for the Wizards. And we have some time where we can take the player who's going to be the best for us 3-4 years from now, and not necessarily the instant gratification right now. Like, that's the timeline we've been awarded. But when you talk about that draft, there was a lot of international players that probably didn't spend the time evaluating and seeing, and this draft has that as well. Yeah. So I think it's a pretty good draft. There's all-stars in every draft, as you know. You just got to kind of take your time and find them. And there might not be the clear 1, 2, or 3, but that's better for us. We have more optionality at the top, and we'll be able to see a lot more guys in DC because of that.
How about one of the players you drafted last year, you mentioned internationally, in Bilal, as far as his development certainly from summer league to training camp, and then what you were able to see during the season for him?
Yeah, I think the first thing with Bilal is just who he is and the professional habits that he has at a young age. And the fact that he had all the physical measurements, but the mindset to come in for what we were trying to do for our team and kind of reset and reshape what a Wizard player really is. He attacked it. He didn't really have a long off season. He played with Wemby and the Met all the way down to the finals and really gained that experience and came with us. But we had him here. He's already attacking the summer. He's back working out. He's grown over an inch since we drafted him, so the guy's like still growing. And this year he was defensive first, defensive mindset first, and really competed every night, and that's the type of mindset we really needed.
I love what you mentioned when you said what a Wizard player is. That means that you're going in and you're trying to build a culture in Washington, this, that, and the other. How difficult has that been to this point? And more importantly, what's like a time frame? How long does it take to build a culture?
Yeah, I don't like to use the word culture as much. I like to use the environment. All right. Because your environment shifts. You have different seasons and things of that nature, so you got to be flexible. There's things we stand for. There are things we're about. And we got very fortunate that a lot of the staff and the players we already had those things, those core values that are important to them. So for us, it was a good year. We didn't win as many games as we wanted to. We definitely didn't compete consistently throughout the year. But by the end of the season, guys weren't pointing fingers. They were still getting better. They were improving. We had a lot of individual growth from our players, which was impressive to see. They bought into that. So this summer is like, how do we turn that individual growth up a notch into a little bit more team competitiveness, team growth? And I think we have the right guys in the locker room to improve upon that and build on that environment.
Well, there's a very high-profile coaching search going on across the country from you.
So ours isn't?
There's certainly a coaching search going on in Washington.
For sure.
You had an interim coach in Brian Keefe who, you know, both you and Mike Winger had history with, and Oklahoma City was part of your staff there. Became your interim head coach. He's certainly, I think, very much a candidate for your job now. What's that process been like, and how much of a factor is Brian Keefe going to be in this process?
I think it's a very fair question. You know Mike, you know myself. We try to make sure that we're doing things a little quiet, make sure we're doing it on our own timeline. We've begun that process. I'd say we're probably in the middle of that process. What Brian did the middle of the season on in terms of accountability and making sure that we competed every single night were things we wanted to see in a positive direction. So we saw some positive things from him. He's definitely part of the search and what's going on, and our timeline will kind of present itself here shortly.
How about building, you know, certainly you being in Oklahoma City for so long, the roster they were able to build there, and we throw around the word sustainable, right, for long. How about, you know, it's hard to emulate what they have done, certainly with all the draft picks, but as far as building something that's just not this year or next year, but you can have for the next, you know, 5 or 7 years down the road.
I think top down it was a line there when you start with ownership and Mr. Bennett and Sam, and the direction he has and the great people that have built a continuity there, and they've done it multiple times. They've seen what it's looked like there, and they had the patience. And the other thing is they didn't put a timeline on it. They keep chipping away, and then let the chips fall where they may. So for us, you can't emulate anything. We've been in different environments, Travis Schlenk, Michael Winger, myself. We've seen it. It's on us to build our own timeline, and it starts with Mr. Leonsis and Michael and making sure that we have the resources, and tactically we'll make sure we build this thing out in a way where we're not skipping steps. We're trying to get away from what we've been in the past and recreate the new form of what we look like moving forward.
Now, over a year in the job.
Not yet. Not yet.
It's not yet?
I was still here with Oklahoma City last year. I'm getting close.
Last summer.
Right. Okay. So not quite a year into the job. How different are you as a general manager today than you were when you first took over?
Yeah, a lot different. I would say the experience that you get every single day is just something that I don't take for granted. The opportunity that you have to lead people and work with really good people. In a city like DC, I'm super happy. I'm an East Coast guy. The diversity in the city, the things that my kids are allowed to do and open to. So like the experience for my family alone in the last 10 months has been tremendous and life-changing. And then the opportunity to do what we all love to do and manage a team for basketball, like I'm blessed and fortunate.
Right.
So I'm learning.
Out of the GM cradle of Emerson College in Boston.
Well, we have a few, believe it or not.
Yes, we do.
We have a few. Thanks
All
to
right,
head coach Smith.
Yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Certainly a lot to figure out. You got to watch these guys a little bit more with those 3 picks that you got.
I'm going to get back to the stands.
Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Have fun. We'll be back in a little bit here at the 2020. Got called up Jesse Edwards, Boogie Ellis, Enrique Freeman, Isaac Jones, and Naquan Tomlin. Obviously, it was huge for them, right? We saw their faces. That's
massive,
amazing.
massive. But Enrique Freeman is a really interesting prospect out of Akron. I mean, he's a young man that led college basketball in rebounding last year. A lot of people didn't pay attention to that. He had 21 and 14 in the NCAA tournament game against Creighton. He's got a motor, and he doesn't just rebound the balls that are in his area, as he's at the free throw line right now, but he rebounds the ball out of area as well. And to me, that's what stood out most about him. He had 31 double-doubles on the season. He made 23s this year, which, by the way, is 19 more than he made in the previous 4 years combined.
Put some work in over the summer. Well, he's put some work in today. Also 8 points for him, and he and Boogie Ellis on the other side. These two guys have been two of the better players on the floor today. Bobby Woj, do these guys kind of have an advantage because they've actually gotten some game reps in here in Chicago? They've gotten into a rhythm and playing in this similar environment, almost a, survive and advance type of mentality to be able to come into this combine.
Right, that's like, is it an advantage in the NBA playoffs to get a couple play-in games and get your legs? But I think, you mentioned with Freeman, that maybe the one element of production that always seems to translate, or very often translates up a level, is rebounding.
Yep.
Right?
Well, and I think also, too, the ability to get another set of eyes here in front of, certainly different executives. Not everybody was here over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday here. Now you get here for Tuesday and Wednesday, can parlay into more individual workouts, can parlay into a two-way if they don't get drafted into Summer League invite here. So the more eyes, the better.
Opportunity. I mean, that's the thing that everybody wants, that comes here. It's just an opportunity to play their best, an opportunity maybe to elongate their career. Like, I never had the opportunity to be here. I wasn't good enough, all right? But I knew when I left UCLA, that was the last time that there was going to be a jersey on me, and it broke my heart. And for everybody that comes up and ever wants to play the game, at one point in time, you're in the backyard, you're at the park, and you're pretending you're an NBA player, and you're making the shot, and you're having that moment. And certainly Jamal Murray's given us a couple of moments during the course of this NBA playoff run. But for all of these guys, this is a moment here to elongate and create opportunities.
So much of making it, and I think, listen, this is certainly true of any profession in life, is for so many of these players, there is going to be a tremendous amount of rejection moving forward. That means workouts with teams, I don't get drafted. Going to G League, I get waived. I'm on a summer league team, I don't play. And the guys who keep coming back, I thought I was going to be in the NBA, I'm going to Europe, and I'm a little higher league in Europe, and then another one, and I'm coming back to the States. How many guys whose perseverance is a skill and maybe is as important as any, and you start to show that here, because it is not going to be a straight line to being a NBA player who's on a multi-year contract.
Well, and one of the questions when I talk to the prospects is like, what makes you uncomfortable? And a lot of the theme is the unknown. Most of these guys had the ability to pick where they wanted to go to college. They don't have that opportunity. They're basically going to be waiting on June 26th or 27th to hear their name called, and then if it's not, then it's going to lead to that next team.
I need to go sit down on the Bobby Marks couch.
We can do it.
Think about that. Think about the questions that are being answered in here. What makes you uncomfortable? I might have to lay down and think about that one for a second.
How many marbles are in this jar?
He's going straight Dr. Phil in the corner on us.
Awesome.
Listen, I got some easy ones too.
You got some easy ones too? I'm still thinking about that one.
But it is the truth. I mean, and for these guys, obviously the end goal that they want to be at, they want to be in the NBA. But there's even the opportunity here to showcase your abilities for international leagues and to be able to play. There's been really good college players that have not had success in the NBA that have gone over and had international success. Kevin Pangos is a guy from Gonzaga a couple of years back. Very good point guard. Has had opportunities maybe even to come back to the NBA, but has stayed overseas because his role and the money that he's making internationally right now is more favorable.
We've seen some heavy hitters in the crowd here as well. But I'm not
Corey,
sure
stop talking about yourself.
Think about this. Think about this. Steve Ballmer showing up for the combine. Now, I don't think we have a lot of owners in the building. I mean, he's kind of a little different,
but
right?
more and more.
Yeah.
More and more owners are a part of the everyday decision-making structure. Now, Steve Ballmer is somebody who, listen, he's a part of it. He cares. He lets his basketball people make decisions. They're talking every day about it. But there's other owners who are much more hands-on in the drafting of players, the trading of players. And if you're a GM in this league right now, you have to be able to manage that relationship and be able to, sell a vision to an owner that you have before he decides to start doing the job himself. But that is the new age of owners.
Can we stay on Steve Ballmer just for a second? My 13-year-old son, Kellen, is the biggest Clippers fan in the history of mankind. I truly believe that. He outdoes Clipper Darryl. The concern I have for him is his health long-term being a Clippers fan, because the disappointment has come time and time again, even this year in the postseason. There wasn't that long ago that they weren't the #1 seed in the Western Conference. Struggled down the stretch. Kawhi Leonard, once again, basically non-active, played the 2 games, but wasn't at 100% in the postseason. What happens to this roster as they move into the Intuit Dome, which will have more restrooms than any arena in the country? I don't know if you've heard that. But you've got your quote-unquote big 3, but out of this big 3, Kawhi signed his extension. Paul George has a $48.8 million player option available to him if he wants to take it, and James Harden's going to be available for business.
Well, I think for the Clippers, their goal is to bring all 3 back. And I think for Paul George, he's the wild card in this. He would... in all likelihood, he will decline that player option, and he can, as a free agent, there will be teams with max cap space in a number of places where it's certainly a threat to the Clippers. It's a negotiation, and they've been negotiating, and it's about landing on a deal. He's always, listen, he wanted to go home to LA. He wanted to be part of this team with this group of guys. They're moving into a new building. I think his inclination is always to stay there, but the longer it goes without a deal, and the idea that he could get into free agency, and the Clippers are trying to hold the line to, in 2 years, not be a second apron team and be a team like Phoenix that is just has no ability to put a group around them. And yet, I think if Paul George wants more money, perhaps more years, it's probably elsewhere. But listen, it's a negotiation. And James Harden, I think, his value is to this organization. I don't think there's a bigger deal out there for James Harden the way there is for Paul George.
Well, we saw prior to February 6th, 35-14, best record in the NBA. And when you look at the Paul George situation, certainly, usually have the collective bargaining agreement set up that you have an advantage retaining your free agents, and the Clippers certainly do. But they're on a level playing field as far as how many years they can offer compared to another team. It's 4 years they can offer, and it's 4 years another team can offer. And I think the Kawhi Leonard extension certainly kind of, I don't want to say from a financial standpoint, set the bar with length as far as years, as far as putting out 3 years in that deal. And they're another one of these teams that, you're going into a brand new building. You want the best product on the court, and I think the best product is retaining, all 3 players.
Let me ask you both this question. Was Paul George extension eligible at the same time as Kawhi Leonard?
They are, yes.
Both, they were. I thought that was the case. Do you feel as though by the Clippers giving Kawhi the extension but not extending Paul, do you think that affects Paul in any way whatsoever?
It wasn't a question of giving. It was them agreeing on a deal. Kawhi Leonard agreed on a deal. It was not a max deal, and that's what's changed now in the NBA. That there was a time when an owner like Steve Ballmer where you could just max everybody out and then max them out again. Well, you can't max out this group if you want to have a supporting cast that can win a title. So now it's a negotiation, and that's what's changed about this league. So Paul George is going to have to look out in the marketplace, decide what's important to him, the chance he thinks they still have to win with the Clippers. But it's going to make all of these dicier. It's starting with the Clippers now, but you're going to see it elsewhere, especially with players who are in their 30s. And you may say, I don't know that I want to go 4 years on his contract. We want to do it at 3. And Paul George might be able to look at a team like Philly. Maybe they go 4 years with him. It's really the changing of the financial dynamic of this new collective bargaining agreement.
Well, we saw it last offseason. Kyrie Irving and Dallas, they were able to negotiate. It wasn't a max contract, but it was a deal that both sides were comfortable. And then you go out and you get Dante Exum, and then and Seth Curry, and you flip Curry for P.J. Washington, you get Daniel Gafford, and you can fit all those. It's all about getting those complementary players and not having a top-heavy roster.
The superstars in this league, the veteran superstars who've had championship teams, have to recalibrate now what a championship supporting cast looks like. It's going to look a lot younger because you're going to need guys on rookie deals, low deals, lower paying deals. If you're going to fit in a couple of, max contracts, never mind doing a third.
All right, Team Herscu up 45-37 against Team Love. After the break, we have the guy who got the #1 overall pick, Landry Fields, the GM of the Hawks, joining us after this. The GM, Landry Fields, the man with the plan, I would imagine, at #1. You've been thinking about it. It's been brewing. A lot of people were very surprised how excited you were about getting the #1 draft pick. I'm not going to name names, but I mean, this draft class, a lot is up in the air. What makes you excited about getting #1 overall?
Yeah, I know. Everyone came up to me and were like, oh my gosh, all the smiles that you had and all that. I'm like, of course. We just beat the odds. It puts us in a position where continues to allow us to build out what we're doing in Atlanta. I mean, that's the exciting part about it. And like, these are positions you always want to be in, and they're what help you continue to build. So what's there not to be excited about?
Bobby mentioned this earlier. You guys had a 3% chance.
Yeah.
Like, you're in a mental preparation as you go throughout the course of the season going, okay, we're probably going to be drafting between here and here. Now, all of a sudden, not so much here, but right here, like Tommy Boy, you found the safe spot at #1. How much does that change as far as preparation now heading into this June draft, as far as how much work you guys have to do?
Great reference, by the way. That was unbelievable right there. Yeah, no, you come in and you kind of know the odds, and you're playing to those, you're thinking about those, but I'm sitting there thinking, like, after 10, we knew we jumped to the top 4. It's like, okay, cool, it's probably 4, it's maybe 3, but then, like, #1 hits, yeah, you do have to kind of change and alter a lot of things that you're doing, and that's what we've been focused on, frankly, the last couple of days. My phone's been a little different these last couple of days.
Landry, have you talked to, any of your peers, mentors who've been through this at the very top about, like, where you start now in your process? What are those conversations been going on as you and your staff try to figure out how we're going to tackle this decision?
Yeah, no, we have a number of people that have gone through this situation before. They've had a #1 overall pick, and it was like immediately after this, I'm like, okay, you've been here before. What do we need to look out for? Where are the potholes? Things that we should be considering as we go through this. So we've been talking a lot about that the last couple of days, and we're going to meet here after these games here to continue that process. But we've got work to do, that's for sure.
How about just this process here? I mean, the #1 pick is not playing right now. At least we don't
Not
think.
typically.
I don't think so. But, that's your pick, right? As far as just kind of whether maybe getting in maybe late first round or buying a pick in the second round, as far as the evaluation process doesn't stop just with the #1 pick right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the word you use right there, like process, and that's what we've been doing all year long. And for our scouts that are here in attendance, like, you never know. Like, things transpire all the time throughout this point in time and the draft, where maybe we accumulate a pick later on, or things happen and whatnot. So we always got to be prepared and ready for that moment.
When you look at the overall roster right now, you're in a different spot than most people that pick at #1, because you've got a team that's not far off, from all of a sudden competing in the Eastern Conference and having success. So when you're looking at filling voids or tweaking little things within your roster. Those comes a lot of times to the intangibles. What are the intangibles that become most important to you and your organization?
No, it's a great question, and you're right. Like, you're trying to now inject something that you didn't really think you had a chance at before with where you're currently at from a roster standpoint. And character is a huge word, right? It's not just about like, oh, is he a great guy and he gets along with the team. It's like, that's a great component of it. But when you start to break that down into aspects of unselfishness and humility and competitiveness and growth mindset, like, these are all factors for us that are extremely important. So as we're going into this intel gathering process, we'll be talking to different people on those elements alone.
Landry, as the leader of an organization, have you thought about like what kind of a test this is now for? When you talk about your process and how you want to do things, it crystallizes in a lot of ways what you want to be about and how, you know, you'd love to have the opportunity to do this. Now you have it, and how do we tackle it?
Yeah, we set out a vision. We set out a vision not just for our front office or our coaches, but for our players as well. And so to be in this position at the current time that we're in, I mean, I think it's a great moment for our entire group, right? Like, we're going to go through it, and part of those characteristics, as I said before, like having a growth mindset. So when you go through something like this, what are you learning about yourself? What is something that we can learn throughout this process that we can then take in later on and continue to build out whatever the next picks may be into the future?
Well, I just look at it, you know, certainly what Indiana's been able to do. You know, and everyone says, you know, you win 36 games, you got to blow it up. Blow it up, blow it up. And he got to hit rock bottom. You can kind of stay in the middle and then keep on adding, you know, players, whether in a trade or whether in a draft. And, you know, 2 years ago, Indiana was sitting, you know, on that dais up there, and now they're in the, you know, Eastern Conference semifinals as far as taking that kind of into consideration also.
Yeah, no, exactly. What they've done over the last few years has been great, and, you know, like the fruits of that are starting to show right now. And, you know, it's just part of like what we're doing as well, you know, and it's looking at this whole evaluation process. It's leaning on people that you trust. It's putting people in positions that do have feedback and all of this, that are creative and strategically thinking about things. And so you lean on them, and then you aggregate the group of opinions, and you make the best decision you can from that point on.
Landry, when you're objectively looking back at however many years you want to go back in drafts, could you make the case there are as many legitimate #1 overall contenders in this draft where you're going to have to really drill down on as any as you can remember, maybe back to 2013, the Giannis draft?
Yeah, no, we're going to cast a wide net right now. We're really going to do our homework. We're not going to allow, no offense, people that are doing all the mock drafts and stuff to really dictate what we're doing. Although I'm sure everyone has great opinions. Y'all are great at what you do. And we're going to really do more and more of the work that we've been doing. And we have to continue to do that. And we have to really lean on our process, our values, our vision for the group.
You're sitting there going, that Victor Wembanyama guy, that would have been really good this year.
Hey,
well, hey, listen.
Their own.
1 is better than 10.
I know. Coming into here, I'm sitting here now because I'm at 10. I'm at 1. So here we are.
Yeah, that's so true. So a lot of decisions, obviously, for you to make. So we're going to let you go watch some more scrimmages, figure out what you guys are going to do at #1. And no pressure at all, of course.
None at all. No, we're excited. We
Thanks
are.
so
we
much,
really
Landry.
are.
Congratulations again. All right, let's take a look at this scrimmage now. Where are we?
Yep.
Team Herscu up 50-39 in this matchup. Also, I'm wondering if Jonathan Givony was listening to that conversation when he was talking about the mock drafts. I'm like, our guy isn't at the desk right now. He's probably shaking his head there on the sideline.
He's suited and booted, though, so he's looking good. You know who else is looking good? Jamal Shead continues to stand out for me. I mean, just the decision-making process, how aggressive and how assertive he's been at both ends of the floor, I think has been outstanding, and he has showed extremely well here in the first half and into the start of the second half.
Sean, 100%. NBA scouts I'm talking to here are saying the same exact thing. They say that Jamal Shead reminds them a little bit of Jose Alvarado, just the way that he gets after people defensively, the way that he pressures the ball full court, denying off the ball. He's giving people a really hard time here. And then he's getting buckets, too. 14 points here already, getting to the rim, finishing, showing his passing ability. I don't think there's a guy that's won more games in this draft than Jamal Shead, and he has a lot of interest among NBA people.
Bobby, let me ask you this, going off of what Jonathan was just saying, is the idea of like size, right? In the NBA, the idea of what your size has to be successful has changed. Jose Alvarado is one of those guys that has helped kind of change that mindset. How much that seeing other guys that are similar in stature impact the ability for general managers and teams to look at a guy like Jamal Shead and say he can be that too?
Well, he's built like a strong safety.
Yeah.
I mean, he is compact. You know, certainly Jose is a little more slight, but you know, certainly like what we're seeing right now, the ability to kind of run the floor, facilitate, take to the basket. You know, certainly the injury towards the end of the year hurt as far as where that Houston team went. But as Jonathan said, like this is going to help him. You know, does it get him in the first round? Who knows? You know, but when we had Landry up here, it's not just the first pick as far as there's 10 or 11. This thing is wide open. Like you could see a player that, you know, we might see in the mock in the 40s. All of a sudden, come June 26th, we're talking about him at pick 26.
The teams who are drafting at 5, 6, 7 right now, in another year, you kind of know the guys who are going to get you. You don't quite maybe always know the order. They don't know who's going to be there. Like there's just no consensus, and this is going to be a wild draft.
Well, that's what a couple teams that I just spoke to in the process leading up to today, they were talking to me and saying, okay, it's a really big challenge to be where Landry is at 1. It's less of a challenge to be from like 14 to 27 because the separation from those top guys to where those guys are going 14 to 27 may not be that large, and it may be about fit and what your need is for your organization, but you're going to find somebody that's going to be a rotational player for your organization.
Well, it's about optionality. So if you're at number 1, certainly, you know, what else is out there? Can you move back? Can you get multiple picks? Remember, Atlanta doesn't control their first-round pick until 2028.
Yeah.
San Antonio has that from the DeJounte Murray trade.
Yeah, and that was why it was so, you know, listen, it's always huge to get the #1 overall pick. But the picks that they do have going out in future years, you know, it allowed Atlanta to get, you know, potentially, you know, a massive piece to, you know, what will be, I think, a reshaping of this roster in this offseason, regardless of whether they had the #1 overall pick or not.
Yeah, Boogie Ellis, by the way, just hit another jump shot. I mean, that's all he's been doing. I mean, just got to his spot, mid-range jump shot, floating a little bit to his left, able to square his shoulders and finish up.
Does it matter that he's actually played games on this court already?
I don't think it matters for him because he just likes to score. I mean, he had one of the all-time great second halves at USC against UCLA, not this year, but a year ago. I think he had like 31 in the second 20. I mean, he can heat up quick. And when he feels confident and he's got his motor running, I think this year was a challenge for him because it was Bronny James, it was Isaiah Collier. There was a lot of parts going on around him. And he was trying to make sure he was still the guy, but also figuring out how he works well with those 2 young freshmen that were getting a lot of the spotlight and a lot of the conversation.
But that goes back to what Christine and I talked about earlier about being the guy.
Yeah.
You're no longer going to be the guy. It doesn't matter. For anyone on the floor right now, I don't see any one of these guys ever being the guy on an NBA team. So now it's about how do you accept that role of coming in and being a part of that organization and being able to complement the guy. And I think that's what Boogie's able to show out here today. But more importantly, he'll have an opportunity to show that, and he gets his opportunity.
Obviously, we talked about how he got to warm up a little bit with the G League Elite camp. I do want to mention, though, the fact that the guys that we talked about at the top, Alex Sarr, Zachary Risachet, even Donovan Clingan, when you talk about the guy that could be the #1 guy overall, it's not a guy that we're going to see out here in the scrimmage. Do you feel like those guys have done enough, shown enough to the top teams in the draft that they should be the top players that are taken as lottery picks in this NBA draft?
No, I think that all of these guys, I think in a lot of ways, they're going to have to compete for #1. I think there's a lot more work to do for everybody on all of these players.
All right, well, these guys have some more work to do. 6:07 left in the third. We'll be back right after this at the 2024. Friday night, the NBA playoffs continue on ESPN. We'll have Game 6 between the Knicks and the Pacers. Series currently tied 2-2. Game 5 Wednesday. Then, if necessary, it's Game 6 of the Celtics versus the Cavs.
Christine, I wanted to revisit a point that Woj made on our way out when he said that they're going to have to compete for the #1 spot.
Right.
Yesterday, we watched many of these prospects, and the top prospects, go through the strength and agility, the shooting, this, that, and the other. What did you guys think about the competition? We saw a lot of guys who went game speed. We talked with Reed Sheppard earlier. But we saw a lot of guys also who were kind of jogging through. Does that become a part of it as you're watching? Do these guys compete all the time, or they only compete when it's convenient for them?
you're being judged all the time in the positions these players are in. And every impression you make has an impact. And I think the sooner you learn that, the better off your career is going to be, the better off your standing is going to be in a pre-draft process. You know, so many teams when they bring, I remember the Lakers when they brought in Kristaps Porzingis to work him out, they want to work a player to exhaustion. They want him gasping for air because they want to see what. Is he going to keep fighting through it, compete? They don't care as much. We know you can shoot. We know you're here because you can play. But when we've run you into the ground, do you quit or do you keep going? That's what they're going to find here in the next couple months.
Well, the individual workouts is the toughest one they'll go through because they're not going from their hotel room down here to the court. You're going city to city, sometimes back to back. You're getting in at 1 a.m. Your flight's delayed. You're working out at 9 a.m. Going through some adversity. You're sitting in a room with a psychologist for an hour. You're getting a team interview, and then you got to get on the plane and you got to go do it again.
Okay, and we talk about your evaluation process. We're just watching the scrimmage right now. The bench for Team Horseshoe is everyone is standing up. They're cheering for the guys that they're essentially competing with right now. They've gone on a 15-2 run, exploded this thing out to 22 points, and these guys are bringing energy and celebrating like this is an opportunity to advance to the NCAA tournament. And to me, that's the part that Woj was just talking about. Listen to, you hear him, but the evaluation process, you're evaluated the second you show up, the second you walk into the arena. Everything you do is put under a microscope.
Sean, all the guys who are here playing right now, if they're fortunate enough to be able to make an NBA roster, they're going to be doing just that. Yep. They're going to be standing up and cheering on those guys who are in the rotation because none of these guys most likely from day one will be in the rotation. So they've got to show that they are good teammates. They have to show that they are part of winning, which makes winning so important here. It's not just about how I do individually. It's also about the team success. And I think it's an opportunity as you're being judged, as Wo said, to be able to show that to the execs here.
Well, you're looking at it right now with A.J. Mitchell as far as picked up full court. As far as, you probably wouldn't have seen that maybe at Santa Barbara here, but this is his opportunity to kind of, show what what kind of impact he can make on defensively.
There's just good ball pressure everywhere out of the floor right now. And to me, that's what we talk about competing. Corey, you've mentioned it a half a dozen times today, like just competing, being there, competing, showing up. They're competing as a group. They're communicating, the talk on the floor, all of those things. How are you talking about the screen that's coming right now that Infaladante just said? Where are you tagging from? How are you recovering out of it? Those are the details of whether or not you get picked, whether or not you get invited to a summer league team, like a two-way contract. The details are usually what ends up separating you from others during the course of this process.
And also being able to do this in what is an uncomfortable environment, as Bobby talked about before. None of these guys are comfortable with each other. They haven't been teammates long. But what you do when you gather the best talent and you put them all on the floor, when the cream rises to the top, those are the guys that you want to have as a part of your organization, the guys that are going to compete no matter what. And more importantly, the guys are going to have success regardless of the circumstances around them.
Do you find that the guys that feel like they're most comfortable when it comes to where they feel like they stack in this draft class, are those the guys that are coming out and not going 100%, or is it just a character thing? What is it about the guys that don't come out and give 100% out?
Well, I mean, Reed Sheppard's in play for #1 overall, and he came out here yesterday and was sprinting around the court as if it was an in-game SEC contest.
But there's a reason for that, because he's in shape. Because Reed Sheppard works like that all the time. So what do you do from the time that final buzzer goes off after your NCAA tournament loss? There's only one team that wins. And so, or when your season finishes and you're overseas, coming here, and it's a small thing, but Pat Riley once told me in a group setting, the one thing that you can control is the level of conditioning that you're in. You can't control anything else in your environment, but you can control if you're in shape or not. And if you are in great condition, everything else will take care of itself. It doesn't mean you're going to make shots, but you're going to have enough legs to make those shots when you're tired.
And I think that's, to Christine's point, that's the difference.
Right.
It's not, oh, I'm secure with where I'm at. Nobody can be secure in this draft
Not
right
in this
now.
draft. No, not
like,
this
honestly,
draft.
like there's nobody that should be walking out here in any aspect, whether you're not playing or you are playing, and going, hey, I feel really comfortable with where I'm at. Because if somebody has that mindset, I'm telling you right now, that's how general managers get fired.
Exactly.
You draft that guy, you're probably getting fired.
And that's exactly what Will Dawkins talked about. That's exactly what Landry Fields was talking about. They were talking about the intangibles, the thing that they see out of the character of these guys and what they're putting out there on the basketball court. Okay. Perscu up 69-42 against Team Love, but we're going to take a quick break right here from the Wintrust Arena here at the 2024 NBA Draft Combine. Welcome back to the 2024 NBA Draft Combine. A lot of people comparing this draft class to the 2013 NBA Draft class. We see who's there at number 1, Giannis Antetokounmpo, number 15. There's a good group of guys lower in the draft that we're taking. Obviously, you see Rudy Gobert there, Kelly Olynyk there. Woj, you remember that night?
I do, and I don't think, to me, the comparison is so much the quality, the level of talent. It's the uncertainty. Anthony Bennett, Cleveland did not land on him literally until minutes before the draft. They were trying to trade the pick. They were still talking about deals. And I remember that night I was getting ready to report that Bennett was going to drop because I was polling teams from 2 into the end of the lottery, and then 15, 16, 17, 18. He wasn't high enough on anybody's board for them to take there. And I didn't believe that Cleveland was really serious about taking him. I thought it was a smokescreen. If he didn't go number 1, Christine, I think he might have dropped as far as 18, 19, 20, 21.
Well, what happened, too, is that I remember that night also is that, you know, because you get to hear who's going to be picked, and then, you know, if it comes through from the league on the conference call, it basically sent like a whoa moment, and then all of a sudden your board shifts, right? Everybody all of a sudden drops, and now you're thinking, okay, the guy I had number 1 is now all of a sudden not, you know, has fallen. Can we maybe move up there and you know, multiple picks to try to get that player?
Hey, Woj, if I'm correct, Bobby, you will remember as well, that was in the midst of where Cleveland got like 3 number 1 picks in the 4-year span, right? That was after LeBron took his talents to South Beach. Right. They took Kyrie Irving at number 1 in 2011 or 12. Then they had Anthony Bennett and then
Andrew Wiggins.
Andrew Wiggins after that.
Kevin Love.
Turned into the Kevin Love trade. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
The other thing, too, on that is we go back to that draft, and you do see names like C.J. McCollum.
Yeah.
And you're like, pretty good.
Yeah.
Giannis, obviously phenomenal.
Victor Oladipo was an all-star.
You know, and so even in a draft that has uncertainty like this one has, we're going to look back on this draft in 5 years, 6 years. Someone's going to really develop. Somebody's really going to grow. Somebody's going to become the best version of themselves. And we're going to compare this draft to someone else down the road and say, wow, we didn't know that guy was going to end up being an all-star, being as special as they are.
But we know there's going to be a bunch of misses in the lottery. There almost always are. It's inexact. And that there's going to be an all-star. Maybe there's going to be an MVP who comes out of the back end of the lottery.
Or the second round. That guy's been pretty good.
Or the second round. And so that's why we love this. It's inexact. We can all play revisionist history. And I think what's interesting is like to learn, I think for the really good executives and front offices, they learn you're going to make mistakes. Do you learn from them? To me, that's still amazing. And, you know, you look at Jalen Brunson. He was hiding in plain sight. He was the National Player of the Year, playing for the national championship team at Villanova. And why did everybody miss on him? Was it simply size? Was it just at his size you just didn't see him as a big-time lead guard? But that's the beauty of this.
I think the issue with Jalen Brunson, in all honesty, was the fact that he had been in college for 3 years, and it was taboo to take a guy that had been in college for 3 years. You look at Malcolm Brogdon the next year, or I'm actually before that, becomes the NBA Rookie of the Year, but was in college for 5 years, the ACC Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year, because it becomes a great pro. But I think that was a lot of it, and I think that's kind of been one of the lessons learned by many of these organizations now. It's not as much about, I mean, Jaime Jaquez is a perfect example. If a guy fits your organization, you take him whether he's been in college for 4 years or he's only been there once.
New Orleans has done a really good job in the draft. You know, Jose Alvarado was an undrafted player. but drafting older players in college who could come in and impact, who they had more information on their body of work, right? Trey Murphy.
Herb Jones.
Herb Jones. They built out a roster with, you've got Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, who are max players. CJ McCollum makes more than $30 million. But they are a contender in the West because they nailed it in the draft, and for who they were and their identity, they found a system that has really benefited them.
And so many organizations, their locker room now is so young that you've got to bring in some guys who have a little bit of experience, life experience, not necessarily just basketball experience, but understand what it's like to do your own laundry.
Well, but if you're like the Phoenix Suns, you need somebody that's got experience that can come in and help you now. You don't need to bet on the future. There are teams in different situations. Like Portland, they're a ways away still. But there's teams that have big threes and maybe miss the playoffs and want to get better. All of a sudden, they need guys that are 4 years experience that can come in and fill a hole now, because the window of opportunity is now.
All right, as we end the third quarter, Team Herscu still up 77.
As a person, he's a really good coach. He's an amazing human being. So I'm excited to partner with him.
How about you? You were able to evaluate Brandon Miller from afar, and now you had a month to see him up close. What have you learned about Brandon?
He is, man, he's a really good player who has a ton of potential, and I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to reach that potential because of his work ethic and how much he cares about the game. But he's an amazing person as well. He lights up the room when he walks in. He's, his energy is contagious, and he wants to be the best. So,
Christine, let me tell you how people do you.
Oh, gosh.
Let me tell you how this goes. Of course, I cover him in college. When he's an intern and the scouting with the Atlanta Hawks, we always on the phone. We texting this, that, and other. He goes, he's the assistant GM with the Brooklyn Nets. We on the phone, blah, blah, blah. Gets the GM job of the Charlotte Hornets. I text my guy, he don't hit me back.
He's big time now.
Big time me. But however, I was texting the wrong number, so I'm going to take the responsibility. Thank you. Christine, he got 2 phones.
No more.
No more. So we had to realize that it was actually the old number that it had to go back to make sure we got it right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but this is your guy, though. So
this is my guy. Again, DeMatha High School goes all the way back. He's grown up through he's been around many of the better coaches in the game, but of course always had a great eyes and evaluated this, that, and other. Proud of you, happy for you, man, getting your opportunity to sit in the big chair.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you. I'm excited, and as you said, it all started back in, really before DeMatha, but going to DeMatha, I was very fortunate that really my parents made that sacrifice, and I got to be around the best every single day, players, coaches, so it was a huge reason why I'm sitting in the seat today.
Jeff, as you guys, since the lottery, you know where you're picking, and you start to figure out who is going to be available to us at 6, is it as unsettling as any recent draft you can remember in terms of sometimes you kind of know the 4 or 5 that'll go ahead of you, just don't know what order? Do you even know who is going to go there, have a sense of it even yet?
No, I think since my first draft, which was 2013, it's probably been as open since then, and that was Giannis's draft, and Anthony Bennett went 1, and it was just kind of open. You just didn't know. So to me, it resembles that draft. But look, I've told our group I'm excited about this draft because we have an opportunity to add someone who's going to ultimately impact our team, impact winning. So I'm really excited about the opportunity.
Jeff, with new ownership and everything in Charlotte right now, what is the culture or the environment you guys are trying to implant there in the Queen City?
I think just continue to raise standards, Corey. We want to be the best. During my interview process, Rick and Gabe made it clear they want to be the premier franchise in the NBA. So when you hear that, that's the best, right? So I'm excited about that. We want guys who are competitive, who love the game, who are going to just be relentless in their approach. And look, the results will take care of itself down the line. But if you can control what you can control each and every day, I think we have a good future ahead of us.
You talked about how Brandon Miller lights up a room. We've talked to a few guys up here about meeting with the guys, the conversations that they're able to have. What are the intangible things that you're looking at when it comes to these players when you have those conversations and get to know them a little bit more?
Yeah, I think, ultimately you want to know what motivates them. Why do they play the game? Some guys have different reasons, of course, and you try to dig into that a little bit. Who's in their circle, right? Who can influence them one way or the other. And You know, all those things matter. And then, of course, you want to get a gauge for their work ethic, their work rate, how good do they want to be, right? So, you know, I love this part of the process because we spend years getting to know these guys on the floor, but now we get to spend some time with them and get to know them as human beings.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us and making Corey feel old. He's been talking about it all show. I don't know why he's obsessed with his age
You've been
today.
doing that all day, by the way.
I haven't said anything about anybody's age. Okay. Corey's been calling out everybody's age. He's calling people old, calling people young. It's fine. Thank you so much, Jeff,
Of course. Thank you guys for having me.
All right, Team Herscu up 84-62. They've been rolling this entire scrimmage, Corey. Any players that have stood out to you at all?
Well, my guy, Trent Flowers, who we highlighted at the beginning, and we talked about his story, went to summer school at Louisville, and afterwards decided he was going to take his talents to Australia, play professionally, and get himself prepared to be in this moment. I'm not sure that he comes in as a big-name guy in this draft process, but in his limited minutes, he's really had some type of impact here in this game, and he's one of the guys that is going to get a lot of inquiry. When you think about a guy like this, Woj Bobby, when you haven't seen a lot of him, but you see the size at 6'7", the wingspan, and the athleticism, the 42-inch vertical leap, he's one of those guys that he's probably going to work out for 15 of the 30 teams over the next month.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I looked at Ethan Almanza, who was in the G League Ignite this past year. It was 2 years with Overtime Elite. Came over from Spain. 6 points, 7 points, you know, a couple rebounds here. One of those 18, 19-year-old players that certainly has played against two-way former first-round picks, second-round picks, got a lot of experience with the Ignite last year.
It's interesting to see a player in the last couple years make a decision to leave a high level of college basketball, you know, to go to that NBL, Next Stars League, because part of why guys did in recent years was you could earn a lot of money. With NIL, we'll probably see less of it, but it's interesting that Flowers made that choice and exposed himself to professional basketball at a very young age.
All right, timeout Team Love here. So we're going to take a quick break at 7:30 Eastern. Then the back-to-back defending champion Las Vegas Aces hosts the Phoenix Mercury. Coverage begins with WNBA Countdown at 7.
Get in the building cost for tonight?
So good. You have the number?
$103. That's just get in the building. That's top row, last in the building. $103 to get into the building tonight.
Biggest debut since Bron in 03.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, for the significance of the WNBA, yes.
I mean, the biggest debut since Bron in 03.
They would love nothing more than to see Caitlin Clark put on a show tonight and put up some good numbers. That'd be amazing. But good numbers, and we talk so much about her scoring, we forget the fact that she also led the nation in assists this year at Iowa. And the people that are going to be around her can flat out go now.
And had over 1,000 in her career.
Right.
Right. Yeah, that doesn't get talked about because she's D1's all-time leading scorer. But again, biggest debut since Bron in 03.
In 03.
She is a box office turnstile.
So you don't want to say yes?
No, I agree with you. I'm just agreeing with you.
Asking.
I'm allowing you to say that. I'm just adding anecdotes to it.
Okay.
I'm just trying to add more flavor. I'm starving, by the way. Can I say that? Like, we've been up here for 4 hours. I am starving right now.
I'm not gonna lie.
But you had jokes about me eating up everything, carb loading
beforehand. I know. I misplayed this. This is my first time on the desk, Corey. You can't get mad at me for not having my yogurt parfait up here.
I'm looking at his tray of stuff down
Overnight
here. Right?
oats.
There's still stuff left here.
There's some good snacks over there in the little snack section. You should have grabbed some. You were just up and over there.
I did. I grabbed some Ritz.
Okay.
If they want to sign me to an NIL deal, I'll do a Ritz commercial right now. And the kids aren't the only ones that can get a deal done.
To get an NIL deal. Since we're talking about age the whole entire show today.
There's a couple seventh-year seniors about Farnham's age this year coming back.
It's unbelievable. Definitely has changed the game. Enrique Freeman, by the way, continues to show well here. Now, 17 points, 4 rebounds. Like, you know, make the most of the opportunity when the opportunity presents itself.
Well, the good thing about that also is he'll have more eyes on him tomorrow.
Yep.
When you have a line like that and you have a game like this, even though your team is not having success, it makes people intrigued about. They want to come back and see you on that second day. See if you can repeat that type of performance.
Right, and then what happens, Bobby, with Enrique Freeman and his agent, all of a sudden you've got, if you didn't have a bunch of teams calling you and say, hey, we'd like to get you in for a workout, we'd like to get you into our building, and then that starts that process that might be brand new from where you were.
What I hope doesn't happen too is that, and we've seen it in past years, is that guys play well today and then all of a sudden we don't see them on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling we're not going to see that case. I just think this is so wide open, and that if you can be out here for another day, why not?
A great example of that was Dante DiVincenzo in his draft. Here he comes out of the Final Four, wins a national championship. Was he the Final Four MVP
he was.
that year? And he plays great on the first day, and everybody figures, well, he'll shut it down. And he's back out there. Do you know what it shows people? I want to compete.
Yeah.
I'm a competitor. And there's a lot to be said for that.
Same case for Jalen Williams 2 years ago. Came out, played well on the first day. Everyone said shut it down. Came back, played even better on the second day, and ends up being the 12th pick in the draft. And, of course, getting quality minutes right now. And may not get a max deal, but he's going to be highly paid at OKC.
Well, Jalen Williams, he will. I will be shocked if he's not a max player.
Well, here's the question. Can they have two max players? Because he and Chet Holmgren both in the same draft class. You're going to have to choose, right? You can't have it.
You don't, because even with these new rules and where Oklahoma City is, and we're not even talking about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in 2027 when he can, supermax. They have so much draft equity. They can keep on turning it over.
No, wait
right?
a minute.
So if you could have three max guys and you can build up your bench with young. Denver's done it.
Yep.
Denver's got three max guys.
I listen to the great Bobby Marks all the time. All the time. And I have heard him say verbatim, you cannot have two guys on the same rookie max deal.
That changed
When
with
did
the
that change?
CBA. The new CBA that started last July.
So now you can have multiple.
Yes.
So Sam Presti, who was on our screen, hello Sam, he can sign both Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren to a rookie max deal in the same class.
And then a year later sign Shai to a super max.
But Shai's is different because that's completely different. Oh, he's getting over 300. That's easy.
But what Oklahoma City will be able to do that really no one else can is other players, when they get to the point where they're going to have to pay them, you might trade them, and you're always going to have, with so many picks, a group of players that you're constantly developing. You look at Denver, Christian Brown, they lose Bruce Brown in free agency, and they have a player in Christian Brown that they can plug in. And Oklahoma City, all the picks they have gives them this thing to be in constant developing talent as they're probably going to be competing for championships. It's unprecedented, the setup they have right now.
We were talking about Jalen Williams, obviously his little brother, Cody Williams, going through the draft process right now. Jonathan Givony is on the court. What has your eye been on this matchup?
Couple of big standouts from this game. I want to start with Enrique Freeman from Akron. What a great story. This guy was a walk-on to start. He had no intention of playing basketball when he enrolled in college on an academic scholarship. Played just 6 minutes in total as a freshman at Akron. And look at him now. He goes to Portsmouth, plays exceptionally well, makes a bunch of shots, gets invited to the G League elite camp, makes shots there too, plays with great energy, gets invited to this camp. And 17 points today, just, again, making shots, which is a thing that NBA teams wanted to see from him. He only made 19 threes this year in 35 games. And so just that ability to stretch the floor and show that he's more than just an undersized five has been very impactful. A.J. Mitchell from Santa Barbara, I think has done a great job today. He measured really well, 6'4½", strong frame. Has just done a great job of setting the tone for his team, moving the ball unselfishly, making great reads out of pick and roll. I heard some scouts here compare him to Andrew Nembhard. He just plays with that kind of patience and poise, great pace, very unselfish. People are looking for this kind of backup guard in the NBA right now who can, has size. He's defended very well today, unselfish. And then Boogie Ellis is another guy that played at Portsmouth, got invited to the G League elite camp, and now he's here at the NBA Combine and just had a really impressive showing today, I thought. Playing unselfishly, getting after it defensively, showing that he's more than a scorer. This guy scored over 2,000 points at USC, but I thought he showed today that he can do more than that.
Yeah, I think to pay off Jonathan's point on A.J. Mitchell, too, against who he's going against. He's defending Jamal Shead. He's defending Trey Alexander, and he's running his offense against one of the best defensive guards available in this draft in Jamal Shead, and has done a great job setting the table, playing with a bunch of players that he's unfamiliar with, and putting them in position to be successful. And I think that to me, again, stands out and not a surprise seeing the film on him leading up to this and knowing who he played for in college, just the toughness that you were going to see out of A.J. Mitchell tonight?
Well, I think the big thing with him, too, is he's healthy. He had an ankle injury during the year that he played with that kind of hampered him, and still averaged close to 20 points in 31.5 minutes here. So that's, you know, what you saw at Santa Barbara, you know, is kind of translating now, but now he's healthy.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for Bobby Marks to go on SportsCenter or NBA Today and tell the world now you can have 2 rookie contracts, because he clearly didn't fill me in on that
You didn't sign up for the class.
No, I absolutely did not. I'm not one of the ones to go back to school.
I'm Mike Greenberg. Here's Bobby Marks.
I don't think he's ever going to get over that.
No. No, I'm like Bobby was with that trade, 10 years, statute of limitations.
And Faladante, he's had a good career at Oregon, but it has been derailed by injury every single year. He's a traditional big. Saw him sprint out in the open floor there, but he's been hampered with injury year after year. He can rebound the ball well, dominates 5 feet and in, very physical.
He's another one of those guys, Sean, that reclassed up.
Yep.
And rarely do we see that work well for guys. Marvin Bagley may be the only one that we've seen it work out for. Rarely do we see that work out well for the guys that have reclassed up. But we got one coming next year that I think is going to be. You heard about him, Woj? We're not going to talk about him today. We'll talk about him all next year.
All right, Team Herskoo gets the win, 99-84. There's Jamal Shead. We've been talking about him all game. We also talked about whether or not it matters about being the best player on the floor or winning the basketball game. Corey, your thoughts on that?
Winning always matters, especially when it comes to the association. It's always important to win, especially in an environment where you're not comfortable, and you bring guys in together and show your leadership and get a win.
Well, a guy who knows about winning, at least today at the NBA Draft Combine, that is Boogie Ellis.
What's going on? What's going on?
USC. Congratulations. Great game. I do want to talk about the fact that, I mean, you didn't necessarily expect, well, maybe you did expect to be here, but you got called up from G League. How huge was that for you to be able to show your talent to these scouts and these teams out here?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I was the last person called in for the G League. You know, I take every experience, everything as an opportunity. You know, I've just been learning from my losses and treating them as lessons. So, you know, I'm playing with a chip on my shoulder from here on out. You know, I'm not supposed to be here. I was the last person called into the G League Elite Camp. So, you know, I'm just continuing to work, continue to get better, and stick with my routine.
Boogie, we talked a lot during the course of the season when I was covering USC, and you had the position this year, unique position of being a veteran surrounded by freshman guards that had a lot of hype and a lot of conversation about them. Where did you grow most learning how to work with those guys?
Yeah, you know, Isaiah Collier, he's like my best friend. Bronny, he's a really good friend of mine, too. You know, just coming in there, you know, being the vet, you know, when I was a freshman, I didn't really have no vets to show me, you know, the way. So, you know, I just, you know, came in there. You know, I always told myself if I got the opportunity to be a vet, that I would be a great one. So I just continue to, you know, told those guys, you know, there's going to be ups and downs throughout this. I've been in college for 5 years. I have a lot of experience. I've been through losses and success, failure, all that. So, you know, I just continue to tell them, you know, you just got to stick with your routine and continue to work. And, you know, everything, you know, will take care of itself, and everything's God's plan. As we can see, you know, I'm here now.
Boogie, ever since Peach Jam way back in the day, you've played with that chip on your shoulder. You continue to carry that. Is that just part of your character and the way that you have to go about this? Because you've taken the long road to get to this point, and the road could get longer, but you seem like you're destined to get there.
You know, for sure. You know, I love the game of basketball, you know. I love it so much, and I put my tears, pain, and sweat into it. So, you know, I'm willing to go through whatever walls I have to go through. I'm willing to kick down whatever doors I have to kick down. So, you know, I'm just grateful for the opportunity, and I thank God.
All right, congratulations, Boogie, on getting the win, and thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we see you out here a little bit more.
Yes, for sure. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, after the break, mine is going down here at the Wintrust Arena. We saw some good players today. Here are our top performers. 3 with 17 points. Boogie Ellis with 11. I mean, Antonio Reeves, we saw him in the first matchup. Baylor Scheierman as well, and Enrique Freeman and Boogie Ellis in this one. So we're going to go around the horn and get the guys' top performers their own personal ones. We welcome in, first of all, Jonathan Givony to the desk. Not matching everybody. It's totally okay. He's a little bit more dapper today.
He wants to stand out, and he does. Not only on air, but also with his fashion game.
Exactly. All right, so happy to have you at the desk. Sean Farnham, who's your guy? Who are you looking at today?
I'm going to go back to Jamal Shead. I know we talked a lot about him in this last game, and I know his team took a loss, but I was just so impressed with his ability to defend, his toughness, his decision making. He could have had 3 or 4 additional assists because he put guys in the right position. They just missed shots. And I think that if you're an executive of an NBA team and you're closing your eyes saying, I need a backup guard, I need somebody that's going to play on my roster for 10 years that can come in and defend at their position, run my team, and is a winner. It's Jamal Shead, and today there was nothing that he showed out on the court that didn't exemplify that for me.
Love Jamal Shead.
Corey?
When I look at it, I'm going with Trenton Flowers. Of course, you know, when you think about the NBA draft, a lot of it has more to do with potential than it does production. And you think about what Trenton Flowers was able to do today in 17 minutes, 5 of 5 from the field, 1 of 1 for 3, but also yesterday, 42-inch vertical leap, and his athleticism is showing off the charts. 6'7". 6'8.5" wingspan. He has the ability to get out in transition, of course, finish, but also able to knock down the 3 ball. When you look at a guy like this, it's someone that you want to be able to bring into your organization, give him time, allow him to play in the G League, develop, and you may mess around and have a star on your hands.
Well, for me, it's Justin Edwards here, and it's someone that Jonathan has in the late first round in his mock draft. I just like the fact that he's out here competing. I mean, he could have easily kind of sat home or sat in his room and watched this on TV, and he had probably one of the best 2-minute spurts as far as 8 quick points, 2 threes, and then another baseline jumper here. And I think it will help him in this process. I think him meeting with teams will help. Trying to figure out kind of what went wrong at Kentucky. It was an uneven season last year.
Jonathan, who you got?
The NBA Combine is not just about scoring. All these GMs here, they have a ton of scorers on their team. They come here looking for role players. And I thought A.J. Mitchell did a great job of showing why he can be a backup point guard in the NBA. He set the tone for his team, playing a very unselfish style of basketball, making high-level reads at a pick and roll, pocket passes, skips, lob passes, transition, pushing ahead, guarding at a very high level, 6'4.5", strong frame. He's a plug-and-play guy that you look at him, you say he can be an Andrew Nembhard-style point guard, someone who can just run your team unselfishly, make everybody better, and not going to score a lot of points, only 5 points today, but I thought he helped himself quite a bit today.
I want to go back to a guy that we saw in the first scrimmage that we didn't get your thoughts on, Givony, and that is, of course, Bronny James. You saw him up close and personal yesterday when he was going through all of his drills and stuff like that. What did you see out of him today?
I thought Bronny really struggled. I thought it was not a good look for him. He looked sped up. He was late with his reads, couple of bad turnovers, got backdoor cut on a couple occasions, played the typical level of high intensity defense that we've come to expect from him, but didn't make shots, looked a little bit tentative. Couple of nice, paint takes and finishes with these floaters, but overall, not a great first day for Bronny James. I want to see a lot more from him tomorrow.
Okay, so luckily tomorrow we have another 4-hour show right here from the Wintrust Arena. We'll all be hanging out once again. Sean, when it comes to tomorrow and the scrimmages that we get to see tomorrow, what are you most looking forward to? I
want to see how Bronny James bounces back from today. I mean, honestly, I do want to see it. I want to see him become assertive. I want to see him play with better confidence. Look, it is the name. It is the star. He's the guy that everybody knows here, whether you watched him play in college or not. But I truly believe that Bronny can do better, and I want to see how he bounces back tomorrow.
I just simply want to see who shows up, who plays. If we feel that anyone felt like they did well enough today to where they don't have to play tomorrow, or if each and every one of these guys shows up and competes the way that they did today.
All right, it's going to be a very good day for Bobby, for Corey, for Jonathan Givony, for Andrew, who the heck is that? Adrian.
Is Andrew? Andrew. Is anybody named Andrew here? I know we talked about Nembhard, but he's playing still. That's Rob Pelinka.
It's totally okay. We'll be back tomorrow. NFL Live is up next, and we have so many more scrimmages from the 2024 NBA Draft Combine tomorrow. We'll see you then.